is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
End around to Neighbors. Has a crease. Malik Neighbors down the sideline. Stays in bounds with a cutback. House call. Another LSU touchdown.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Millen, ball comes loose, and it's going to be an incomplete pass. No, it's not whistle dead. It's still alive. Turner is going to waltz into the end zone for a touchdown.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Texas brings pressure. Duggan backpedals, lofts to the end zone, wide open. Johnston, touchdown.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Pokey Wilson in motion. It's Benson. Benson, his second touchdown tonight. 15 yards for Trey Benson.
Now here's David Smoak and Craig Smoak.
And here we go on this Friday afternoon, and just past 3 o'clock, we take you up until 6. We will discuss last night's NBA draft, also the College Baseball World Series now into the best of 3. 2 SEC teams, Florida and LSU, will meet again, as last night LSU in a dramatic fashion winning 2-0. Let's start with that. Garrett Ross, LSU fan, my God, the text he was sending us was, and I get it. It was an unbelievable game. Wake Forest had a fantastic run, great pitching, both teams. Wake Forest had the play at the plate by Trey Morgan that was insanely good to get Wake Forest out on what was a squeeze play that was bang-bang with the right call. Craig, amazing. And that's just to get to the championship series. That's not even to win the whole thing.
Yeah, it was an incredible game. A lot of great pitching, just great moments, a lot of drama, and a lot of sadness on the part of Wake when all was said and done. You know, a team that felt like they were going to, be the best team in Omaha and be the team walking away with the title at the end of it. They don't even make it to the championship game. So definitely disappointing for them, especially given that it's like not like you gave up 10 runs and you lose a game that way. So you lose a low-scoring, late-decided contest, and brutally decided, by the way, in the way that it happened. So, yeah, I mean, they, outside of having some more offense, I mean, they did, what they could to try and scrape together a win, and just wasn't enough. But for LSU, it's been, you talk about the programs like TCU have had maybe some of the better years in their school's history, and I'm not saying that this is up there for LSU, but it's got to be, among the upper tier of seasons, I would have to imagine, with just, it seems like across-the-board success. Football was a surprise because you maybe didn't think Brian Kelly was going to be as good as he was right away. Women's basketball obviously wins a national title. I know there's been a plethora of other things that happened as well, but now you've got baseball team in position to potentially win a championship and add to that collection. And just high drama, high stakes, and one big swing of the bat, and LSU is going to, the championship round against Florida. So should be a great contest between the two.
It wasn't nearly as dramatic as Morris hitting the home run back in 1996 that won the actual World Series in the championship game, but it reminded me of that, Garrett Ross, back when you were probably 5 years old. But you just kind of had a feeling that somebody might launch one, and LSU probably more likely the team to do it, and they did, and they move on to the series now against Florida. When you saw that go out,
I literally screamed in my living room some obscenities very proudly, and my son was like looking at me like I was a psycho. But yeah, man, I was so pumped when they brought the pitcher in after Cruz got on base. When you have Tommy coming up, that big things can happen at any second, man. But right when that bat connected, I literally lost it.
Yeah, I would love to know how that pitcher was feeling, because that was the shortest, most brutal stint. Goes up there, throws a pitch, and just throws a fat meatball too, like the fattest pitch you could possibly throw in that situation. And, somebody who knows what they're doing is going to see that and go, all right, I'm knocking that out of the park. And that's exactly what happened. But, yeah, I mean, just threw up a big old meatball. And you could tell, that's just not what it was supposed to do. The ball had a different thing in mind. It's like, no, I'm going to hang up here and get crushed. And LSU took full advantage. And, Tommy was the hero, as you put it. And they got to celebrate in big fashion, but it's not quite over yet. But, yeah, that was brutal to watch from a Wake standpoint because, you're in extra innings. Mm-hmm. You're making the pitching change. You're on the edge of your seat and just boom, one swing, and it was over very quickly.
And then now the series starts tomorrow with Florida, SEC. I'm going to say this, and it might not be the most popular thing, but, you hear kind of at times you get worn out, like what's the word, fatigue from the SEC. And a lot of times you hear that, they beat their own chest, and they win. They win. They don't win everything, but they win. And here's another example. There's a lot of teams, including ACC, Wake Forest, or TCU from the Big 12. And in the end, it's LSU and Florida, and they are playing for the national championship this weekend, Saturday, Sunday, and then possibly, if necessary, on Monday.
Yeah, because it resets double elimination.
Now, the NBA draft, Keontae George, Baylor freshman, picked by the Utah Jazz at the 16th overall pick. I was watching the draft kind of off in the background. I think that game with LSU and Wake Forest might have been over because this thing went late into the night. So Keontae George, congratulations. There's that Baylor connection there, along with Lindsey, the general manager, and former Baylor player Jake Lindsey, who I shared a text with earlier today on working on getting a beat writer who covers Utah, but they seemed pretty thrilled that he was there at 16. I saw a tweet from, I forgot who picked 17th, but they said, this is perfect. We're going to get Keontae George fall in our lap. And then one of the guys that covers a lot of the draft prospects and a lot of the leading up to the draft said, not going to get him. He's gone. He'll be at Utah's camp by the next 5 minutes. And sure enough, that's the case. Now, two Houston players drafted in the first round. Keontae Johnson was drafted in the first round. And obviously, Grady Dick had the outfit of the night, and he was drafted also in the first round. So a nice night. 4 players from the Big 12 drafted. Of course, I am including Houston as a part of that. And UCF had one of their players drafted. But the players, Grady Dick went to Toronto, Keontae George to Utah, Keontae Johnson to Oklahoma City, Jalen Wilson, Kansas, to the Brooklyn Nets. Speaking of Oklahoma City, that's where Adam Flagler is going to play. Was not drafted. There were thoughts that he was going to be at the very end of the draft. He went through the 2 rounds. He was not drafted. Flagler will end up, he signed with Oklahoma City. TCU's Mike Miles signed with the Mavericks right there in his own backyard of playing with TCU. And then Drew Timme, hell of a college player. Of course, Baylor beat up Gonzaga in the championship game. Timme did not get drafted. He signed with the Milwaukee Bucks.
A lot to unpack there. Let's start off with Keontae George. Good for him. Glad that he was able to, go relatively high in the first round. Just on the verge of being in the lottery. Missed that by a couple of picks. So, almost had 3 straight lottery picks for Scott Drew. But he just missed out on that.
Yep.
And still, though, 3 first-round picks, in a row. So that's a nice little mark for the program that I don't think they'd ever had back-to-back until last year. So they've never had back-to-back-to-back. And, maybe potentially they keep that streak going next year. Don't quite know about that yet. But if you're talking about who was number 17 and was ready to draft Keontae George, that was the Lakers. That would have been a little spicier than the Utah Jazz, all due respect. But there is that relationship there with their front office and Baylor. And I don't know, man, it kind of felt like every time in the NFL draft, it's like the Browns draft a Baylor player. It almost feels like the Jazz do that now. It's like, oh, somebody's going to go to the Jazz. And I looked at it, and it's not like that's happened like 5 times in the last 10 years or if it's happened even 5 times in 20 years, but it just feels like that's what's happened a lot. Like it feels like there's been a lot of guys that have played in Toronto, whether they were drafted or not. Utah, yeah, sorry. Utah. Feels like there's been like almost every guy's gone through there except for like Davion Mitchell and maybe 1 or 2 others. So they're awfully familiar. That should, hopefully play into him having a, great chance to just seamlessly blend in and feel comfortable and all those types of things. But happy for Keontae. He's a great player. You mentioned 4 Big 12 guys, but you mentioned like way more than 4 names, and that's because you're not counting Houston, right? Or
no,
UCF.
I mentioned the 4. I mentioned that Houston had 2 because I wanted to get that in there, and I said, but they're not, of course, towards the Big 12.
But did you mention UCF?
But yes, I did.
Okay,
I mentioned UCF, who was drafted by Utah.
Taylor Hendricks at number 9.
Yep.
So, that just to clarify on the 4. So, there was 4 actual Big 12, and then 3 guys in the first round from the new Big 12 school. So and then nobody from Oklahoma or Texas, right? So that really wouldn't have been one of those where you go, well, yeah, but if you take those teams out, then so that's a good look. That'd be a super strong class if it was next year and all of that was officially teams under the same banner. But you feel good about what Houston's going to be able to do and continuing to produce draft picks. I think Baylor's on a historic roll as far as their program's concerned. And you didn't have a Texas Tech, others that might, but Keontae Johnson, great story there. Grady Dick, I love that he explained the idea behind the red sequined suit, which at first I think probably people just took as just fashion, just in general, but it was a nod to Kansas. He said in his interview that it was like Dorothy's ruby slippers. So I thought that was super cool and creative to have that slant on it. It'd be, if he just showed up in that, it would have been like, okay, fashion dude, and he's into that. But then he explained why, and I was like, wow, that's really kind of fascinating that he put that much thought into it. So that was a nod to Kansas in a Dorothy Slippers kind of way. So he seemed to be a pretty popular dude there, and looks like he was having a lot of fun. And great night out as far as like the Big 12 goes. I don't want to do what everybody's probably already done all day long and what everybody inevitably do the day after the draft next year and so on and so forth. But it really is almost an unwatchable product, and I don't think that's the fault of Malika Andrews or JJ Redick or anybody else that was up at the table as far as the ESPN broadcast goes. But it just drug on. The same complaints as every year. You don't know who's playing for who after a certain point. And really, I think the biggest problem for the draft as far as like a TV product goes is who the hell are these people? I mean, if you look at the picks, there's like some college guys, but there is a lot of international, which is not new. We've been doing that for like 20 plus years now. But with the influx of the G League guys too, I don't know what the actual numbers came out to, but it's like half the draft is not even college players anymore.
No,
it's G League and international, and that's fine if you follow it closely and you're like, oh yeah, the dude from Lithuania or the guy from the Ignite. But as a common just person passing through like I was just like, after a certain point, it was just there, and I didn't even know what I was absorbing, but I was glad for the guys that got drafted getting to live their dreams.
Garrett, I'm about to send you, we're going to get into a couple of more notes about West Virginia, but I want to give you the heads up. I want this to have, when you get it, let me know. There are 3 stories about West Virginia men's basketball. Kirk Krissa, who was at Arizona, transferred to West Virginia, wanted to play for Bob Huggins, has entered the transfer portal. Also on top of that, West Virginia power forward Trey Mitchell officially enters the transfer portal. And Joe Toussaint has also, from West Virginia, averaged 9 points per game, entered the transfer portal. So that's the reverberation and the backlash, not of the decision that Bob Huggins had to resign, but the fact that he resigned, and now you have the attrition on a roster that had been put together pretty carefully, as we've heard from Tony Caridi and earlier, what he had done to really establish that roster going forward. And now 3 players are on their way, at least have entered the transfer portal.
Yeah, I mean, we can relate to some late exits on the roster and the just craziness of a coach getting fired late in the year and just kind of everything swirling all at once and trying to figure out and just figure out where everything's going. I know for West Virginia fans that it probably feels like your head's swimming in a lot of different feelings and just thoughts on like what all's happening right now, especially given how high you probably felt when the class was coming together and knowing what it was going to look like. And then all of a sudden the coach is gone under terrible circumstances. There's always going to be infighting no matter the decision. Like there's going to be some segment of people, no matter what the reason is, that are going to, pop up and have feelings about it, and I've certainly seen some of that. So there's already this infighting that develops, and then you start losing players, and so I've seen that up close and personal. It's an ugly thing. Hopefully West Virginia fans are able to rebound quickly and just kind of stick together and wade their way through it and land a great coach who will then land some great players as well. But it's a crappy situation, to say the least, for everybody involved, and I hate it for the fans because they're just sitting back and wanting to enjoy and contribute where they can, and I'm sure many contributed to putting together that class, or some of the guys who came on board, and that just sucks.
All right, we have breaking news and tragic news. Texas A&M assistant coach Terry Price passed away. Had been on the football staff since 2012, working with the defensive line. He began specifically with the defensive ends in 2015. He also played for the Aggies from 1986 to 1989. KWTX. Price was on their staff. He passed away, and he was 55 years old. No other, at least, information on that. I had been given a little bit of a heads up about an hour ago from someone that is very much high up the donor chain at A&M. He said that there was a story that was out there, and he would try to help give me some at least clarification on it. There's the clarification, hoping it was not true. Terry Price, gone. Longtime Texas A, former player, and also assistant coach on Jimbo Fisher's staff and many others. Don't even know how to respond to that.
Well, I mean, I'll do my best. That's sad and unfortunate. Not really having any details. Not that necessarily matters. Don't really know. And not knowing him or any of that, don't really know how to react to how abrupt this was, other than that's just really sad. And it's unfortunate, and feel for his family and all the Aggie fans out there. He's been a big part of that program at various turns, and, a lot of the big recruits they landed over the years, you typically see Terry Price mentioned. I know I've seen his name in some form or fashion when it comes to college football recruiting. I mean, I know I've probably seen his name going on years and years and years and years and years now at this point. So the name is certainly very familiar. And, he was good at what he did and made a huge impact. And that's just very sad that's 55 years old is way too young for anybody. And, I just hate that for him and his family.
And he was a hell of a player at A&M, and now longtime assistant coach is no longer a part. He's no longer with us. Don't have any more details. 55 years young. And horrible news, and thoughts and prayers to the family and the A&M family, the university, and also the football program. All right, let's break with that, and we will come back. We have Grayson Grudhay for today at a little after 3, probably even earlier than 3:45. Coug Asutra. You may not know him. He is on Twitter. That's his Twitter handle. He's a Washington State alum and also a blogger. He's going to join us today a little bit after 5 o'clock. He's got some interesting things to say about what's happening, the wait for Washington State, Oregon State, and for, everybody, including what might happen. He, I think, is confident based on a couple of traded texts with him about what will happen, but frustrated. His thoughts coming up at 4. Mike Scarborough covers everything LSU on the Tigers being in the College Baseball World Series Championship Series. And then Brandon Marcello, an interesting story. It came out yesterday thanks to a heads up by Dave Bartu with College Football Matrix. The top 10 coaches in college football, the on-field coaches, not top 10 head coaches, the top 10 coaches based on bang for your buck of what they've produced, recruiting, and much more than that. That will be today at 5:30. So this is 365 Sports. Ideal MRI in the Central Texas marketplace, where you can find out what is bothering you. I've had a torn rotator cuff, a detached bicep. I've had some impingements in my lower back. I also had an MRI, a couple of months ago, actually a year ago, and then again a couple of months ago, just to check my abdomen because of history of prostate cancer in the family. And thank God everything came back clear. Maybe it's your knee. Maybe it is not so much your rotator cuff. Maybe it's the lumbar. And then it could be something that just is bothering you. And the doctors have done whatever they can. and now they suggested MRI. And if they do, you make sure you let them know you want to go to idealmri.com for the reasons of finding out what the problem is. And then you might even get great news. It's not as bad. It might not be a torn ligament, but at least you can then rehab or do something to fix it, or just leave it alone for a while. And then on top of that, it's $497 or less. That's what it'll cost you every time, or less. I've had $497 3 times. I paid $400 once. IdealMRI.com will help you file insurance and try to even lower the cost. The average is about $1,100, and theirs every time is $497 or less. Dr. Rob Maxey and his staff, the MRI machine, which is state-of-the-art, it is phenomenal. I've been in it. The staff there, the techs there, they're incredible. Those who welcome you when you walk in the front door, setting up the appointment, they're fantastic too. IdealMRI.com in the Central Texas Marketplace, just south of Waco on I-35.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
It's Ram season at Allen Samuels in Waco, and the deals couldn't be any hotter. Shop the greatest selection of new inventory in Central Texas and save big on Ram trucks. Now offering 10% off MSRP on a new 2023 Ram 1500 Lone Star Crew Cab, or get 2.9% for 72 months. The choice is yours. Plus an extra $500 bonus cash to first responders. Allen Samuels in Waco is the place to shop Ram trucks. Visit today or browse online at allensamuelsdcj.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8 year old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Jack did a great job printing out in a PDF fashion the Big 12 preview in Athlon's magazine, and I mentioned this even back on Monday or Tuesday with Dave Campbell's or any magazine, Phil Steele or this one, how difficult it must be to be able to print one of these now, knowing by the time it is published, unlike maybe, I guess, in the last 2 or 3 years, you're going to have an occasional change, maybe even a coaching change. But how many changes are possibly even different than when they went to publish or went to the publisher with this magazine? The interesting part to me, here are the bowl team predictions. They have Oklahoma playing Texas in the Big 12 championship game. They have Oklahoma, Kansas, Kansas State, Baylor, Texas Tech and Iowa State, Oklahoma State, TCU, and Texas making it to a bowl game. None of that includes the incoming 4, Houston, UCF, Brigham Young, or also Cincinnati. So they have 9 teams out of 14 making a bowl game, and they have Texas winning the Big 12 title and being a part of playing in the Cotton Bowl against Utah. Oklahoma would play in the Alamo Bowl against UCLA.
Texas versus Oklahoma is very interesting because I don't quite have those same high hopes for OU, but I'll admit that I'm more of a pessimist when it comes to my teams. That way I'm pleasantly surprised. I think it's kind of like the psychological reasoning behind that, but I guess it's not that crazy because at least I acknowledge that's probably what I'm doing. But, yeah, I don't know that I've seen anything this offseason other than them just acquiring talent, losing guys here and there like everybody else, the same kind of roster attrition and changes that you make as a first-year coach. Outside of that, I'm just not they fixed everything, like they're good to go now. I'm a little more hesitant to dive in on a Big 12 championship or appearance, but you know what? They're Oklahoma, and they've been there more than anybody. They've won it more than anybody, and they're going to take a lot of records, particularly in football, with them when they go out. So I would not put it past the Sooners to be able to make it there. I'm just a little bit more hesitant and full-blown predicting that. The Texas thing I do feel good about. I mean, I get it every year. It's the same kind of thing, and I do think that'll be one of the great things about post-Texas Big 12 is you can kind of just get past all of the usual sort of hype and not speculation, but sort of the hype and the build-up for them. And I know that they haven't been like the top of the media poll every year. Like I think that the voters have been pretty good about that, but they have taken up the amount of attention that you would think that they would more often than not. A lot of the talk is about where they fit into the landscape. So I think when they're not in the picture anymore, it'll be really interesting to see how these are kind of thought through because they do get a little bit more of the benefit of the doubt. And you know what? This year I think they deserve it. I think that they've got the team on paper and they've got the additions in place that I really don't know where you look and you go, like, they're not a Big 12 caliber, capable team. I think that they're perfectly set up for it. I'm sure there's probably an area, too, where they're not as strong as maybe others. But just looking at, that offense and all the weapons Quinn Ewers is going to have, and the offensive line is finally at a place where you feel good about it. The defense, I think, is going to be pretty good, even though they've got a lot to replace. I mean, there are some questions, but I'd like their questions in comparison to a lot of others a lot better, right? There's sure things I like a lot better than most others. But I'll tell you what, like, I just saw a couple of Tech fans in, like, the last, I don't know, like in the day or so, that I guess we posted the video of, like, when we did our just kind of loose conversation on who's going to run the Big 12, and basically the end result was nobody's going to. Everybody's going to take a bite out of it. But we were talking, and I'd say I'd put TCU at the top right now. I think I had, like, K-State maybe at 2, Baylor 3, Tech 4. And I had one guy say Tech's top 3, another guy say Tech's 1. And I do think that they have some things in place as well to potentially be that, but I'm not going to put them past teams that have been there, done that, and done it like in the last couple of years. You know what I mean? Like K-State and Baylor both won Big 12 titles in the last couple of years. They've gone on to play in big bowl games. Like they've done it recently, but I understand why there is all that hype. TCU obviously has done it recently. They took it to a level not even Oklahoma's taken it as far as winning a playoff game. But that little crop of 4 right there is going to be really intriguing. And, I think it's going to be a fascinating race in the Big 12 this year. But as far as, like, the teams not making it, I think that, those new 4 certainly maybe jumping into the deep end, it's going to take them a little while to get their bearings about them. I think they all have legitimate question marks that you could say, yeah, maybe they're not quite ready to fully go win 6 games right out of the gate. I don't know that all 4 don't make it, though. Like, I feel like maybe one of them does, but that'll be, like, that'll be fascinating to see just how rocky of a road it is for each one of those teams and kind of who they are on the other side of playing the schedule that they're getting ready to play. So that's interesting. That's a lot of bowl teams. What'd you say? It's
9
out of 14. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. That's some good payouts if you take care of a business and win 6 games. 9 teams can do that. That'd be pretty good for the league. I think it's probably on par with what they usually do. So you want to get maybe a couple more if you possibly can.
Well, 9 out of 10 is maybe 7 or 8 at times, but 9 out of 10 normally would never have happened. There's always going to be 1 or 2 that just slip below. They drown as far as wins and losses, but 9 out of 14, I mean, if you're going to have 14 teams, that's what you should do.
Yeah, I don't know if they've ever had 9 out of 10. It feels like they're like it's 7, probably 7, 8.
There were times it looked like maybe, but eventually, again, the schedule just kind of takes care of itself.
But then you think about you're adding 4 teams and maybe you get 1 more or 2 more bowl spots, and so that 50% maybe if you get 9 spots in there, that'd be great. That'd be a lot of bowl teams to be able to keep track of and watch, and so that'd be good.
All right, so a part of this Athlons magazine as well are coaches anonymously scouting a team. For example, and this is part of this is I can't read it as well, but I'll try to do that. When I copied this, I thought it was better than it was. They were a confusing team to play last year. Something was definitely off. Coach Aranda is a really smart defensive coach, but it didn't seem like they really used a lot of stuff he's known for schematically. Guys weren't playing as hard. To be honest, just weird vibe for an Aranda team. The roster was solid. They have had dynamic speed on offense. The quarterback is solid but not remarkable, and Mississippi quarterback Sawyer Robertson could push him. Also, Jeff Grimes, the offensive coordinator, has a really solid offense. I think they do an exceptional job with their running game. This will be a big season to see how they rebound from 21. It's the year after the step back where you find out about culture and development. Nothing said there was breaking news. We, in fact, have analyzed them, and some of that has been admitted by Aranda and his staff and even players, but that's the anonymous coach discussing the Baylor Bears, and I can't disagree with much of anything that was said.
I mean, I think that's pretty much just reading a season recap of what happened. I mean, we've talked about every single one of those points ad nauseum at this stage. They did have a pretty solid run game, and to think they had that when they were really just running a true freshman 90% of the time has you feeling pretty good about adding a Dominic Richardson and having a Bryson Washington to throw in there along with Quaylen Jones and Richard Reese. I mean, that automatically should be a huge upgrade so long as the O-line can, perform at a certain level. They're losing a lot of guys, but I don't know. It felt like, they weren't All-American last year, so it's not like you got this huge gulf of talent that you're having to make up for. So I think they can make the transition on the O-line a little bit better than, maybe other situations where you're losing multiple draft picks, for example, or something like that. Shapen's got to play better. Like, just bottom line, he has got to be better. If he's what he has been, then you're going to hear the Charlie Brewer chants and or talk on social media, and you're going to have a lot of the same frustrations that have sort of bubbled up at times, certainly over the last year, but over the last year and a half. And really, their quarterback situation just in general has kind of been a hot subject for 3, 4, 5 years now at this point. They have not been super solid as far as just a guy in the reins and being the man and remaining the man and all of that. So Blake Shapen's now got somebody on his back that's, waiting in the wings, and Sawyer Robertson, who I think is much more of a threat than a Kyron Jones obviously was, obviously not having Gary at their disposal. We didn't get to see what that would have looked like. That would have been fascinating if Gary was on the roster last year to see how that would have turned out with the quarterback situation. But, yeah, Blake Shapen's got to be better. They made a bunch of, tweaks on all over the roster, but switching defensive coordinators, that was a big move. Aranda's big swing 2 years ago that eventually led to a title was making some staff changes on offense, and, that turned into a Big 12 team the next year, Big 12 championship team the next year, and now they basically did something similar with getting rid of Ron Roberts, like, right away. we'll see how that goes with Matthew Powledge in that seat now. They do have some guys to replace. I've got questions kind of all over that defense, but they seem to be pretty confident. So we'll see. I mean, but yeah, that's a summation of kind of who they've been, and I think that's the question everybody has about them is who are they? Like how nobody really knows how good they might be or how bad they might be or really even what to expect, quite frankly. So it's going to be a mystery until kickoff.
Let's mention 2 or 3 other teams. First of all, the defending champions in Kansas State. They're smart and physical, one of the most complete teams in the league. They can take a philosophy like Matt Campbell at ISU, developmental program, mental discipline, tight family culture, make it work at a higher level more often. They won't be as good without Deuce. He was more important to them than Bijan was at Texas. The guy could ball out. They still very good defensively, and their offensive line is really good. They're an offensive line program, show, don't tell, and they'll fight you same to start the game as they will at the end. With quarterback Howard back, they should be considered a favorite to repeat in the Big 12. They're more talented than all but 1 or 2 teams, probably their mentality tougher than those 2 teams.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I definitely am not dropping them into the middle of the pack or lower part of the pack. I mean, they're right up there in that group I was just talking about with TCU, Baylor, Texas Tech. I think Oklahoma State's a real mystery. That's a team that, probably should get more credit for being a contender in the new Big 12 than they've probably gotten at this point, just because we're all kind of down on them right now at the moment. But K-State is set up well. I mean, They do lose Deuce, and that guy's been such a huge part of what they do, but there's a lot of great vibes around Trayshawn Ward and the others in that stable that they're going to be able to pick up the slack and not miss too much of a beat, or what they do miss, they'll be able to make up for in other ways. So, he's obviously a guy you'd love to have back, but he made his mark, and, he's hopefully going to have good things in store with the Cowboys, but I don't think K-State drops too much as a result of that. Everything else, there are, like, Malik Knowles is no longer there. There's some other changes as well, but Deuce is obviously the big one. They've got, they're all-American offensive lineman back, and BB, got Walker Howard back. I mean, they're going to be fine. They're going to be good.
Texas Tech, this is what an assistant coach says about Tech. For all the Texas high school coaching hires, head coach Joey McGuire was a high school coach, as we know, as recently as 2016. I think this one is still an experiment. It's still hard to tell. That's not on Joey. He's done a really solid job there. It's just that they're still not a high-end Big 12 roster. They're still in the – I can't wait to see the Texas Tech fans in our chat room on this one. Again, this is somebody's opinion. It's just that they're still not a high-end Big 12 roster. They're still in the middle of the road, and you can see it when they get off the bus. The offense will be really good. They've basically got everybody back, but they're used to that kind of performance. Having a good offense alone isn't why they hired Joey McGuire. The things we've noticed is the cultural change. They've got a legitimate home field advantage, and when they're up on you, it's just an awful place to play in a game. They're loud as hell. Hiring a high school guy doesn't make Lubbock any closer to Dallas. That's why we're still a little critical. If they're on the same guy, the same guy as Houston, how does that? If they're on the same guy as Houston, how does that end up? It's always been a hard place to build consistency. And it has been, and Kim Coulter yesterday in the chat room, oh my God, we're not going to win a game. Our coaches suck, our players suck. And that's kind of the us against the world mentality. What most of the time you hear with Tech is that even with some teams that have been really good or you thought could do better, or when you've had Patrick Mahomes, it's been 14 years really for anything dynamic. Not that they haven't had some success, but this guy, whoever this coach was, again, it's anonymous, so it could be anybody, but he's just saying, let's tap the brakes and see what happens in year 2. That's probably against the grain, isn't it, Craig, than what most people think 8-5 might end up better in 2023.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with him on some stuff here, and I don't think we have to. I know Tech's got a rabid fan base, but I don't feel like we need to walk on eggshells with them. Not that you are, but like every time somebody says something negative, it's like, oh, chill out, Tech. Like that's part of the deal. And look, like people who want to be, a little hesitant to go ahead and put the crown on their head are totally reasonable in feeling that way. Like, I get that there's a ton of hype right now, and they are all over social media, and there's a great recruiting class that's being built up. And they had a great first year, but that doesn't ensure that you win 10, 12 games the following season. But are they set up to be able to do that? Yeah, I think that they are potentially set up to do that. I think that the biggest thing I disagree with him is the whole Lubbock and recruiting thing. Like, I know that's been brought up with Joey McGuire. Hell, I brought that up to Joey McGuire at Big 12 Media Days last year because that is such a thing. And, like, the look on his face, you could just tell he was just sick to death of having to think about this question or answer this question or hearing this question. And I totally understand it because it's still being asked. But, I mean, clearly it's not that big a deal. They got the number 20 class in the country. And I'll tell you what, this is the thing about Lubbock. I lived out there. I lived very much within that community. And it's far as hell away for most people. I had a 7-hour drive, for example. That was not fun. So when I went out there, I was out there. I was out there for like some months before I went back. Part of that was by choice. Part of that was like, yeah, I just don't want to drive 7.5 hours back home for like 2 days and then turn right back around and drive 7.5 hours. So, like, you are kind of almost stranded by choice in some ways. But when you're out there, it's pretty damn great, right? Like, when you're out there, it's a great college town. When you're out there and you're a college kid, it's tremendous. I won't speak to being like 40 and living there, but it's a nice community. But we're not talking about recruiting 40-year-olds or, you know, families or whatever. We're talking about recruiting 17, 18, 19-year-olds. And for that purpose, it's really easy to recruit there if you bring somebody on a visit and show them around. It's super easy. It's just, you know, there's this stigma, and I think that they are attacking that stigma and putting some cracks in that stigma. And I think when all is said and done, eventually that talk is going to trail off. So as far as that particular storyline, as far as on the field goes, I think that they're finally going to have some consistency. I don't know how you build off 8 and feel like you made a huge step forward because that was such a big first year. Like, now do you have to win 9 or 10 to feel like you like really made another jump? That's kind of the weird part about jumping out as quickly as they did, because you could in theory have an 8-win season and still like almost have a better year than last year, depending on kind of how it went. But yeah, I mean, I think all the pieces are pretty much in place. You know, maybe there's still some things roster-wise that this person sees or others see that are still in development. But for the most part, I mean, I don't know where you look around and you're really super concerned about any particular area or feel like they don't have playmakers or the ability to really do anything. I think they're really solid. I wouldn't put them in the Big 12 title game, or I won't, you know, in my pick this year. But as far as setting themselves up to have the opportunity, they could be in there this year if things fall the right way. And they certainly are building themselves up to be a regular contender to be in it every year. So, yeah, things are going well in Lubbock, and I think there's every reason to be positive about the direction.
TCU, and then we'll break, and Grayson will come back on many things Baylor as they have another weekend of recruits. A lot of teams are doing that this weekend and have been for the last couple of 3 or 4 weeks and going forward.
Tyler Shug needs to stay healthy, though. That's a big thing. The secret
to their success last season was they could match either the physicality or the athleticism of every team in the league. If you wanted to dig in and fight, they could do that. If you wanted to go talent on talent, they could do that and hang. There is no way to recreate that with many guys as they've lost. Max Duggan is a huge loss for them. He made that offense work better than it should have many times. Also, honestly, he just made things happen when plays broke down, overcame some of their deficiencies. With him, it's bigger than just replacing a quarterback. The Briles system should fit pretty well. Sonny Dykes will know how to manage that. They can't repeat what they did last year, but they're set up for a pretty strong future in the league. They're recruiting the state of Texas at a different level, and that's why Sonny's a success. He didn't waste that playoff run at all. They're probably the best brand in the league moving forward. Now, there will be people disagree with that, but there's the summation of TCU.
Yeah, I think that there's reason to feel like they can't replicate last year, because last year just, I mean, in multiple ways fell their way. I mean, there was the K-State, play at the goal line that, like, for the first time it felt like, wait, what just happened here? There's a glitch in the matrix. Like, they didn't get in the end zone. What are you talking about? They lost? What?
You expected them to score.
Yeah, and he almost did. Like, he almost won that game, and then they win the playoff game. And then, obviously the only game they really had no business being in was the Georgia game. And that was, comically bad at a certain point where it's like halfway through and you're just like, do you want to run the clock in the second? That was just the fate for probably 99% of the teams that could have potentially, played Georgia in that game. But, beyond that, I mean, they were in every single one, and more often than not, other than K-State, a big play went their way. And, I don't think that you can replicate that. I do think that that's something that it's just sort of some years the ball bounces your way and some years they don't. And I don't think that you can replicate that. Now, I will say this about what they do with Kaz Kazadi and just his whole focus on the strength of the mental side of things. And, if you watch like clips of him as far as like, in the biggest, most heated, high pressure situations, they aren't going to be the ones to break. And I think Texas Tech has that same mentality. I think that's the mentality that Matt Rule had when he was at Baylor. And I think that's the mentality that obviously Kaz had at Baylor prior to that. They're just going to be super strong mentally and physically, and they're going to be super fast and talented. And I think they're going to all have those things. They just you can't replicate luck in some ways. But I do think you can replace talent, especially in this day and age with the transfer portal. Duggan, what he did, can Chandler Morris duplicate that? I don't know. It's a different thing now. But I think TCU is going to be really good. Like I don't think that they're going to drop off and be like, well, maybe they win 7 games. No, I think that they're going to be right in the thick of things, and just maybe lose a couple games based on the fact that there's not just a couple extra seconds remaining in Waco to get you that one extra second to be able to get the ball down and kick, get the kickoff or whatever other close calls they had. But yeah, I think they're set up really well with Sonny to just use that transfer portal to replace talent most years. Build up and really do well with developing guys. And yeah, I don't think they're going anywhere.
All right. When we come back, Grayson Grundhafer is ready to look at the another weekend of prospects visiting Waco. Like I mentioned, there are places everywhere. We will come back with that. Also, Kuga Sutra, Washington State alum and a blogger. His thoughts about the Pac-12 and also where Washington State stands. Mike Scarborough on LSU, not just baseball, but also the stories yesterday on football and men's basketball with Les Miles and also Will Wade. This is 365 Sports. Joined by Samantha Duvall, TexasBeefHouse.com, Director of Marketing. 4th of July. It's coming up. We've been through Father's Day, Memorial Day before that, and now you have 4th of July. What are a couple of specials, or maybe when people call, they could focus on the 4th of July weekend?
So we just got a new shipment of inventory in, so we are stocked back up on our brisket. We're stocked back up on our ribeyes. Of course, we've got hamburger patties, jalapeno and cheese patties. Those are one of our biggest sellers. Also put together what we call the grilling package, and it's a package that gives you sirloin, filet, hamburger package, regular patties, jalapeno and cheese patties, New York strips, and some of our Wagyu garlic links. They're fully cooked. You just throw them on the grill or put them in the oven.
It's pretty amazing, the growth of the business. TexasBeefHouse.com, just outside of Tyler and White House. Aaron Duvall, the owner, and we're talking to Samantha. To just be a part of this company and watch it grow, how impressed have you been in just these recent months or in the last year or so?
It's actually been pretty awesome watching us grow the last year. We started this company almost 6 years ago, and just by word of mouth, it has blown up our last year. We're now shipping to all the lower 48 states. We ship Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. We also do local deliveries in our area within a 20-mile radius, and we're part of our farmers market every Saturday here.
Where is the best beef in Texas? Your house. When you order from Texas Beef House, unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu from our pasture to your plate. TexasBeefHouse.com.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry, and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon-wrapped fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes, cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links, fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
It was broad daylight. I stepped into a gas station for 5 minutes to grab a snack, and just like that, my car was broken into. They made out like a bandit. My laptop, my phone, everything. I called my agent to see what could be done, and he restored my faith in humanity. My claim was processed so quickly, and I was able to recover my losses.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
It takes time to reach goals. It's a truth that applies to more than sports. It goes for your financial goals as well. You work hard for your money, and you deserve an investment strategy that lines up with your game plan. And Chuck Verno, your Edward Jones financial advisor, can help. If financial investments aren't putting forth the effort you desire, stop by today for a financial review. Chuck Verno, 720 North 64th Street in Waco, 254-732-1161. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
Welcome back in 365 Sports. Craig Smoak. Smokey will rejoin us here in a little while. Got the reins for right now. Joined on the phone lines by Grayson Grundhafer, Sikkim365.com recruiting analyst, director of broadcasting. Talk a little football and basketball and just all things going on with the Baylor Bears as we normally do on Fridays around 3:45 or so. Grayson, thanks for being a little bit patient as we were just having some fun talking about the Big 12 and what it's going to look like, and it's just fascinating what we're heading into. But let's start off here with some NBA draft. As last night, Keontae George goes number 16 overall to the Utah Jazz, giving Scott Drew and company their 3rd straight first-round pick. I saw someone that, 3 straight top 16 regardless. Almost had his 3rd straight lottery pick. Just missed that by a couple of spots. But what did you think about seeing Keontae George going mid-first and to a clearly an organization that knows a thing or two about Baylor and the Utah Jazz?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things that I feel like it's a really big deal. And I know there was a tweet earlier today. I think there's 5 schools that have had a first-round draft pick in the last 2 years, Baylor being one of those. And then, of course, like you said, 3 straight years with the top 16 pick. That's obviously a big deal. And I think going into the draft, a lot of people were a little bit nervous about what was going to happen with Keontae because, if you kind of look through different sites, you would see, some people had him in the top 10, late top 10, like number 9 or 10. And then some had him, potentially falling to the very end of the first round, maybe even being one of those guys that falls all the way to the second. But that absolutely did not happen. I felt like as we got closer and closer to the draft, it felt like those picks, 14, 15, 16, which I believe was Raptors, Pelicans, and then the Jazz. It felt like he was going to go somewhere in there. And I think he ended up at a pretty good spot. And an organization that has drafted quite a few Baylor Bears in recent memory, including Jared Butler, a couple years ago. So, yeah, he ends up with the Jazz. I think it's a good spot for him. He'll get an opportunity to play very early in his career, which I think will be nice, but he'll also get a chance to develop. And that's an organization that had a really nice year this year. I felt like they kind of turned the corner a little bit in some regards. Of course, their end-of-season record wasn't great, but they played a lot better than I think many people were expecting. And so now he gets to be added to the fold, and I think that it's going to be a very nice fit for him. And I'm just happy for him. Another Baylor Bear gets drafted in the NBA, which is great.
And another will be getting an opportunity. But first, I wanted to ask you, did you as a Spurs fan have like a Victor Wembanyama welcome party? Like, how did you celebrate the foregone conclusion once they had the lottery ball hit on number one? I mean, this we all knew this was the pick, but how did you celebrate the Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes as a Spurs fan?
It wasn't anything too crazy. My wife and I were watching it while we were making dinner, and it wasn't anything crazy. We didn't go to a watch party. I know a few of my friends were actually in San Antonio at the AT&T Center watching it from there, so I'm sure that was pretty cool. But, this year we went to, me and my friends, we went to the NFL draft instead of the NBA draft. You kind of, I'm not saying I regret it, but it definitely would have been very cool to be at the NBA draft for sure to see that. But yeah, great stuff for the Spurs, obviously, getting a generational player like that. It's very cool to see.
I have to say, as somebody who's been to multiple NFL drafts, that I bet to see the number one pick in the NBA draft would be fun, but by the end of the first hour, that place had depleted, family and friends were still there. It wasn't as much of an event, clearly as the NFL draft was. But yeah, very cool to see him go number one. He seems like a great guy, and be fascinating to see how he pairs with former Bear Jeremy Sohan there in San Antonio, who was making the rounds as a media guy and doing a great job throughout the night all over the socials and whatnot. So, all right, elsewhere, Adam Flagler does not get drafted. I don't think that was a huge surprise. We knew that was going to be kind of a wait-and-see sort of thing on whether the chips would fall right to where somebody would reach out and grab him. Instead, he does end up signing an undrafted deal with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Your thoughts on him landing in OKC and the opportunity there for Adam Flagler?
Right. I think Adam was, dealing with kind of lingering injuries during the pre-draft process, and I think that kind of set him back a little bit. And I'm not saying that's the only reason that he didn't get drafted, because I would have said it probably was, 60-40 that he gets drafted even before that. But I think in general, when you look at the second round, especially as you get later in the second round, it doesn't really matter if you get drafted or not. A lot of those guys, it's better to just go undrafted and go to, not necessarily, I'm not saying the place that you want to go, but maybe a more ideal place for your career. And I mean, Oklahoma City, that's a group of players that are very young, very talented, and I think he's going to get a great opportunity to develop there. And I don't know how much of an impact he'll make. We'll see on that. But I think they're going to give him a shot to definitely develop into the best player he can be and potentially be an NBA caliber guy at some point down the road.
Is there any way for them to make it 4 straight first-rounders? Is there Jalen Bridges if he plays well enough? Is there a one-and-done candidate in your mind, or are we going to see this very cool school record of 3 straight drafts? And I know compared to Kentucky or North Carolina, it's not a big deal, but for Baylor it is. And to have 3 first-rounders, 3 top 16 guys in a row, I was thinking about this a little bit last night, but wasn't trying to dive too fully into that. But did you give that any thought?
Go ahead and put all your money on Jacoby Walter being the next first-round pick for Baylor next year. He's a 5-star prospect, the number 9 player in the country coming in. And the biggest thing, I think, for Jacoby, I think a lot of people you're going to see that this year. He's a very, very good shooter. And guys who can shoot the ball like he can, guard like he can, and are a legit 6'5", 6'6", can play that shooting guard, potentially play small forward if he grows a little bit more. But a very well-rounded player who I think is going to shoot the 3-point ball at around 38, maybe even 40% this year. And if he does that, I think he will definitely be a first-round pick next year. He's young. I also think going into next year, a lot of people loved this draft class. You had a lot of guys at the front that many people felt like could be superstars. You had guys in the middle who you felt like could be really good. Next year, there's not as much star power, at least at this moment. And I think that gives him an even better shot to be a first-round pick. But, yeah, I would go ahead and bet on that. I actually think he'll probably be close to being a top 16 pick, which would make it 4 years in a row.
That'd be a pretty big deal. To see how long you can build that streak, and compared to the history of the program, I mean, it's another just little feather in Scott Drew's Hall of Fame cap when you look at the fact that they never had 2 in a row first rounders, much less now 3, and see if he can't take that even further. All right, to the football side of things, camps have been going on. They had another one last weekend, and you and I talked about that on the podcast. It was a specialist camp. RG3 also had his football academy, but they'll have another high school camp coming up this weekend. But coming out of last week, you did have the commitment of Tidehaven running back Joseph Dodds. Your thoughts on Dodds? And I know that you had teased that you thought this was probably going to happen. I know Tech was involved, and then they landed a running back, so that probably helped. And it certainly didn't hurt Baylor's chances, but landing Joseph Dodds, what do you make of that for the class of 2024?
Very big deal, I think, for this class. He's 6 foot, right around 200 pounds, had a really nice season last year, 1,600 yards, 12 touchdowns, was a first-team all-district selection. He runs with a whole lot of power and a whole lot of speed, and that's something that obviously Baylor likes in their running backs. I think he's one of those guys that still has a little bit of ways to grow as well, which is awesome when you look at his vision. And, being in an offense that isn't quite the same as Baylor's is also one of those things that could be an adjustment. But I think when you watch his film, the things that stand out to me are just, again, the physicality that he plays with. He runs extremely hard. The first guy does not bring him down. And then the second thing is when he gets in the open field, he does not get caught from behind very often, which is great to see in a running back. You like to see that burst, but then also that finishing speed to be able to hit home runs. So, yeah, this is a great pickup. He had offers from Texas Tech and Missouri, like you said. Those were kind of his final 3, those 2 along with Baylor, but he also had offers from Stanford, Cal, Houston. So a really nice pickup. I think he's kind of a perfect fit for what they want at the running back position. And they also have a couple more running backs that they're still targeting. So I think there's a chance you could see 2 running backs in this class, but Dodds is definitely a great one to start with.
All right, Grayson, we're a little short on time here, so if you could keep it quick. I know, as I mentioned, there was that high school camp coming up now this weekend, third straight weekend with some activity over there on campus. What's kind of the to-know, summary of what Baylor fans should know kind of going into this weekend and what to expect?
So I'll try to keep this as quick as possible, but Desert Mountain, Arizona tight end prospect, Dylan Hipp, he's a 4-star prospect. He's going to be deciding between Ole Miss and Baylor probably next week coming off of this visit. So very, very important. He's on his official visit to Waco this weekend. Keep an eye on him. The next guy, Evangel Christian Academy out of Louisiana, offensive lineman Tristan Santoro. That's the same high school as Blake Shapen went to, but Santoro visited last weekend for a camp. He's back on campus for an official visit. He's had a Baylor offer for a while, but I do think it's a situation where he might come to Baylor and go ahead and make a decision this weekend. So that's another one to keep an eye on. And then Mansfield Summit linebacker Kylan Reed. He has a final 3 of Oklahoma State, Utah, and Baylor. He's already taken official visits to the other 2. So I believe this will be his final official visit this weekend, and then he'll go ahead and make a decision between those 3 schools. So 3 big decisions coming up. Baylor definitely in the running for all 3 of them, potentially could land all 3 of them before the end of June.
All right, Grayson Grunhafer, recruiting analyst, director of broadcasting, Sikkim365.com. Appreciate it, man. As always, have a good weekend.
Thanks, Craig.
All right, there you go. A little run around, or a little, rundown, I should say, of what Baylor's got going on. Picking up a running back earlier this week. Another week of recruiting, another weekend of recruiting on the horizon over on campus as well. And as you heard him say there, an opportunity to maybe pick up 1 or more recruits this weekend. We got more coming your way. Stay tuned. This is 365 Sports.
The future's bright. The time is now.
College is what you make it. It's a late-night pizza run and all-nighters coding a new project. It's having big dreams and making them a reality. It's a professor who knows your name and your story. It's preparation for your future, your calling, your life. And at Baylor, it's even more. Baylor, where lights shine bright.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men
an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Boots add protection. Good boots help you climb better and move forward faster. And when your son or daughter steps into the boots of a U.S. Army officer, they also learn how to lead. In these boots, they'll gain more confidence with expert training in one of more than 150 occupational specialties. In these boots, they'll stand a little taller and lead a team with diverse backgrounds and areas of expertise to successfully accomplish whatever challenge comes next. In these boots, they'll earn respect with valuable experience from day one that will give them solid footing for success into the future. Highly qualified candidates who earn a spot on our team can receive comprehensive health care coverage, college tuition assistance, and a bonus of up to $40,000. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak and Craig Smoak.
All right, so I was not a part of the last segment. Craig is not a part of this segment. Craig had to avoid somebody swerving into his lane right before he got to our studio at 101 Elm Avenue in MLK, and he ran his front right tire into the curb. It popped. He was able to just turn right into the entrance where we park on the side of the road. So we've called AAA. They're amazing. He finished the Grayson Grunhafer segment so I could get everything set up, and now he's out there because the technician is already here to fix his tire, at least we hope so. And so I'm here. Craig will join us once all of that gets done. But it says a hell of a lot, like in 10, 15 minutes, AAA had somebody here at the studio. All right, so this was a tweet from, this has been a few days back, from Kuga Sutra. I've been following him, kind of watching what he says. Not everything about college football, not everything about the Pac-12, not everything about his alma mater, Washington State, but I have noticed him. The headline of the day was that Washington Cougars, obviously the AD, suggesting that media deal was going to be flat. So with that, we can all start to bank on Colorado and Arizona leaving. It also feels like the national media has been correct in the reporting about the Pac-12 media rights. It's been a tough day. Now, things can change since then, And Kuga Sutra, who's a Washington State alum and also a blogger, joins us on 365 Sports. How you doing? Good afternoon.
Smokey, how we doing, man?
I'm doing really, really well. And I do appreciate you joining us. And I know you want the Pac-12 to be healthy and survive and the Pac-12 media deal work out. Want Washington State and Oregon State and others to have a home. Have you changed your mind since that tweet back when Schultz spoke, and so did Washington State's board?
A little bit. You know, I think that things change in a hurry just based on time. I mean, I think that most college football fans can, take at face value that if folks want to leave and there are invitations that are already out there, they would have already left. So I think that we can bank that there's some sort of media deal that's in the work for the Pac-12. One of the things that was really confusing about the comment that was made by WSU's president in front of the Board of Regents a week or so ago is this idea that the projected revenue of this new media deal is going to be flat. The question is flat relative to what? And since the initial statement, you have folks like Mandel out of The Athletic that thinks that flat means that the annual deal is going to be somewhere around $380 million, which would be about $7 million more than the Big 12 deal. I think that that's really unlikely. The thing that the Pac-12 has to deal with for those in Sick Nation that haven't been paying really close attention is that the Pac-12 overbilled Comcast by about, I think that the most recent projection is about $70 million. So all member schools are going to have to pay that back. Then on top of that, they downsized or moved out of San Francisco to move to a new headquarters for both the conference and the network. That resulted in cost overruns of anywhere between $10 to $15 million per source. So all that money is going to have to be paid back. So flat revenue means that they, presumably means that they would be getting more or less what it is that they're currently receiving, which is right around $27 million, including Tier 3 rights. So when you factor the amount of money that they probably have to pay, or that they do have to pay back to both Comcast and also in terms of the cost overruns, you're probably looking at a value that is somewhere right within 10% of what the Big 12 is expecting to get. Now the question is that if all of that is really happening, what's the delay? Why haven't these opportunities for expansion been offered to San Diego State? Why haven't they been offered to SMU? And I think probably the reason for that is that I would think that probably the most logical partner that they have is Apple. Apple's never been involved in the college football deal before. And there's a lot of rumors that a part of the Apple package may include some sub-licensing to either ESPN for their nighttime window or to Fox Sports 1 that apparently still has openings in their nighttime window. That results in a whole bunch of lawyer issues that will probably take a while to put together. And as long as that deal isn't signed, things can fall apart, especially for a school like Colorado, who has a history with the Big 12 and also needs money.
So, again, this is just like a bad toothache. I explained that to somebody on our chat room about whatever happens. And I think that I'm going to take this stance right now. There are some that want. Obviously, there's a lot of people, especially those attached to the Pac-12, who want them to survive. There are people in college football that want every conference to survive. And there are some that want to see them, go bye-bye. And perhaps that would benefit other conferences. Most of the time, people bring up perhaps the Big 12. Whether that's true or not remains to be seen. But I think everybody wants to see an ending, right? How much longer do you think? Can it go past this month, which is next Friday? Can it go past when Pac-12 Media Days, which is in about a month?
I can't imagine this can go past Pac-12 Media Days, and I think that there have to be aspects of the process that have to be sped up. The reporting's been pretty sketchy on SMU and what would be the parameters that they would need to be able to exit the American Athletic Conference. San Diego State's very well documented, and they're kind of already starting what feels like it could be a protracted battle with the Mountain West Conference. But they need to formally resign by June 30th, or they're on the hook for $34 million. And it's really hard to imagine any scenario in which it is that San Diego State can join the Pac-12 and actually pay that money back to the Mountain West Conference, given what the projected numbers are for the Pac-12. So there has to be movement on that front. The issue that the Pac-12 has in terms of only having 10 teams is that in terms of trying to get that broadcasting money up, they have an inventory problem. And so there really, I think, are needs to not only add 2 more members to add an additional slate of games every week, but also this idea of how much more money could be brought in by having the Southern California, San Diego market, and then also at least a part of the Dallas market. So at least on San Diego State for sure, potentially SMU as well, there's going to have to be some movement on the expansion front before January 30th before June 30th. And that isn't necessarily going to come in the form of the Pac-12 offering an invitation. It will come actually, at least in San Diego State's case, and them just formally resigning from the Mountain West Conference. And if they don't do that, then at that point in time, I think things start getting pretty dicey, because I can't imagine that you have a media deal that isn't tied to inventory. And if those schools can't get out of their existing deals, then you're stuck at 10 members. And then at that point, where does that media deal go?
We have had a writer who covers Washington State back when the USC and UCLA story broke about a year ago. But as someone who's a Washington State alum, and oh, by the way, a fan of anyone who's a fan of a school that might be kind of like a little bit nervous, there's nobody right now among the 8 remaining teams in the Big 12 that did not have heartburn on many occasions in the last 10 or 12 years, because the Big 12 has lost Nebraska, Colorado, Missouri, A&M, now Texas and OU after this year. Is that the same feeling you get, that kind of the unknown of where Washington State might end up?
Well, I think that those of us who are diehard Washington State fans are definitely really nervous about where this is going to go. I mean, I think that there's good reason to believe that the Pac-12 is going to survive for at least another cycle, if not more. I think that the expansion of the college football playoff to 12 teams and an automatic berth for conference champions is going to be a game changer for parity across college football, which I think is going to be good. It's going to help out leagues like the Pac-12 and the Big 12 forward. But if Washington and Oregon bolt to the Big 10, as some have expected, and the 4 corner schools, or at least Colorado and Arizona, go to the Big 12, then Washington State's really on an island. There's rumors about, what's going to wind up happening with the ACC down the road. There are a number of schools in that conference, including the likes of Syracuse and Louisville, Wake Forest, maybe even Duke, that will be, Power 5 schools that would be left out of a new wave of realignment, and Washington State could potentially be a part of something like that in the same pack. The Mountain West Conference is not a good home for Washington State in terms of its budget model. Our athletics program will tank, I think, in that situation. I think some of us know that our current president, Kirk Schultz, is the former president of Kansas State, was really active in realignment in the Big 12 the last time around, or before this last round of realignment. And I think that some of us, quietly hope that if all this falls apart, that Washington State might find a home with some Big 12 schools, which I think would be a good place for us if the Pac-12 doesn't work out. If you are walking around, if you don't mind, because we're getting a little bit of noise, but it's so far great. We appreciate your time and the insight. What in your gut do you think's going to happen? I think the Pac-12 is going to stick together. I think that and make it through for another immediate cycle, and then we're going to see what happens with the expanded college football playoff in terms of what happens with the sport. I think that Colorado is the one school that really is really the 50-50 in this entire thing. If you recall back to Coach Prime's press conference, there was a Colorado writer who asked their athletic director about whether or not they had the money to pay for it. And he said, not now, but we're going to. And that's revealing about the hole that Colorado has dug in all of the stuff that's come around with Coach Prime, which is a great investment, but it's a costly one. They need money. And the Big 12 is in some ways, an interesting fit for a school like Colorado, because I think that, in contrast to the Pac-12, if the Pac-12 survives, Oregon, Washington, and Utah stand as kind of the presumptive favorites every year in that new conference. In the Big 12, there are a lot of candidates, but who the big dog is outside of Baylor, of course, I think is a little bit more of a question. And so I think that Colorado may feel like, in addition to being able to make more money in the Big 12, they may have a better chance of being more competitive as well.
Yeah, it's really been it's been unbelievable how long it has taken, and obviously now everybody waits. Obviously, all of the 10 remaining teams, they all wait. UCLA and USC and UCLA, whatever, it doesn't affect them, right? Because they're moving on in a year. So, and then you have the ability that one or two that might be added. We keep hearing, and discussion is about whether Colorado or somebody else might leave. To me, the bigger story is a couple of Group of 5 schools are out there waiting on whether or not they have a chance to be a part of a Power 5 Autonomy 5. And that's just as big, and that might happen, who knows, in the end. Schultz was, as you mentioned, at Kansas State, and that is a wild card. And not only how he handles sometimes the Big 12 and what they weave through, but how he could possibly have the relationships to get things done. What are your thoughts about George Kliavkoff?
Boy, the guy has had, the toughest hand that any, incoming commissioner could have. But I think that, even somebody who wants to be on his side, and I'm one of those, it's pretty hard to give him anything other than an F. You fall asleep at the wheel and you lose, your two biggest brands, the two schools that you couldn't afford to lose, you lose, along with a failed alliance that preceded that. You have to think that he had an opportunity to have the exact same deal with ESPN and Fox that your mouth was able to achieve by opening up those negotiations early, which was a brilliant move. And at that point in time, there was really, the Pac-12 found themselves, really kind of bidding against themselves. And that ushered into, a tricky economy, and a broadcast market that went from really, really hot, last summer to really, really cold as soon as the Big 12 closed their deal. So unless, a real miracle happens, and potentially it does with a streamer, I think that ESPN's announcement that they're moving to essentially just becoming a streaming platform in 3 years is probably making the idea of the Pac-12 getting a mostly streaming only deal probably a lot more palpable for the president. But Kliavkoff has not delivered the goods. He's been silent throughout, which is probably something that the media partners appreciate, but as a PR move, he's been getting crushed by Big 12 media and others. It certainly has been a disappointing start, and hopefully it isn't a tragic one.
Hey, man, appreciate it. Enjoy your follow, and also following you. Good luck to Wazzu, and also a lot is said about Colorado or Four Corner schools, or obviously you have those that are kind of a part of the hierarchy with even Cal and Stanford. We know what's happening with USC and UCLA, but I'm telling you, Oregon State, Washington State, they've been through, are going through, or I hope not, what a lot of teams in the Big 12 have dealt with. And everyone kind of feels like Washington and Oregon will end up on their feet no matter what might happen with the Pac-12. Thanks for your time. Enjoy the weekend. Let's stay in touch.
Sounds good. Stick them and go Cougs, man.
That's Kuga Sutra, Wazzu alum blogger. His name is Michael. He is someone that I kind of caught during all this time. He has been probably very even keeled, not too high, not too low, as you heard in the segment with us when it comes to the Pac-12 and what Washington State may face. And part of it where he really jumped out was he was very concerned when Washington State had that meeting about revenue, and it was going to be flat. Now, what about flat, and what does that mean? And that's why I invited him to come on today's show.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I first saw Kirk Schultz of Washington State have his little sit-down with one of the big booster people, that was enlightening, and we talked at great length about that. And then it was like a couple weeks later when they were, reporting that the athletic department was, not mishandling. The finances weren't what they should be or where they would like them to be. And so they were back, in the news for that. And I know just with him Schultz having spoken a couple of times, and in both of those occasions about, hey, a deal's coming soon, this or that, or even making the comment about like it'll beat the Big 12 and saying things like that. Like he kind of put Washington State out there, and they're not really the team that's leading the charge here. They're the team that's very much riding the coattails, with all due respect, of whatever happens, and they're at the mercy of it. They're not the one that's going to be the change that causes the conference to remain the same or to drastically change. So, good to get some insight from somebody who's, in that area and in that realm, so to speak, of following Cougars athletics. That's a, athletic department that I got a lot of respect for. And, I know that it's got to be tough for their fans to kind of be flipping in the wind, but everybody in Big 12 country knows what that's like. And it's been a brutal few months for just, speculation and wondering what the future is going to hold. But here we are. We're a week away from the end of June. So, it just inevitably time's going to run out one way or the other on whatever timeline there actually is. And we're going to get a decision made on, what the Pac-12 is going to look like moving forward. And for Washington State's sake, I hope that's a good spot for them. But, yeah, we still don't know. We just, don't know. Like I'm seeing the same speculation every day of, well, what about if this deal – and I know there's all these reported numbers, and I think we all lose track of even where they come from sometimes, right? Because, there was various like, well, the Pac-12 is only going to get like $10 million offered or $12 million or whatever it is, and I don't know where that came from or whatever, but then the next day it's like, well, they've only got 14, and then the next day there's somebody saying, no, they're going to be well above that, and so you just don't know what to believe or where it's actually even coming from, and that's the toughest part is if you're just somebody who's just trying to figure out what's going on, it's like there's a lot to kind of sort through, but eventually we'll get on the other side of it, and I think that's going to happen relatively soon, and everybody, including Cougar Sutra, will have an ability to take a deep breath and then kind of go from there.
I think I speak for everybody, whether you're someone with a fan base or whoever, even perhaps cover the Big 12 or alum, a fan of a team, or even the Pac-12, media to fan base to even probably administrators. I think one of the best days here, you would think in the next month, you would hope in the next month, is whenever there are finality of details, or whenever there is a finality of details, and then, of course, there might be reaction to it. It might be, everything's fine, we move on, my God, that's great, or wait, that now we may need to look at this before we actually sign, and not just agree to grant of rights, but sign them. And I'll tell you what, that'll be the happiest day for me. I've been through watching teams leave. When I arrived in June of 2010, I remember that I was listening to a talk show discussed that Nebraska and Colorado were leaving, and I was accepting a job to work covering Baylor and Waco. And I'm like, damn, there wasn't even a part of me personally that I'm a Nebraska fan that I was going to be able to watch Nebraska and Baylor. That never came into play. My whole thing was, what's going to happen with the Big 12? And as long as Texas and Oklahoma were a part of it, everything was going to be okay. But during that same time, you had the Pac-12 looking around at the Big 12. And then, of course, we didn't even realize that there was a pot of boiling water with A&M and even Missouri. So I feel for all of the teams, fan bases, etc., that don't quite know even if you're confident one way or the other. I always remember one time when Mack Rhodes said this: we will find a way, not just Baylor, but Kansas State, not just Kansas State, but Texas Tech, not just Texas Tech, but Iowa State or others would find a way. And they have, and they did. And now the Pac-12 is in that kind of situation themselves. When we come back, we're going to hear from Mike Scarborough. He covers LSU. And we'll also let Garrett ask, my God, how many questions he's going to ask, not just on the baseball team, but the stories about Will Wade and Les Miles and retracting 37 wins in football, and also Brian Kelly, year 2. This is 365 Sports. Petty Clinic, lowt.com. Dr. Kent Petty offering men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic and also Wegovy. It's an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of the powerful medication offering average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year. Also, in addition to body sculpting, semaglutide normalizes blood sugars, has clinical research proof of reducing stroke and heart attack risk, and even high blood pressure. If you're like a lot of people and you just can't get rid of that little extra fat around your stomach or that little extra weight and you want another way, well, again, are you exercising? What's your diet like? But this, too, can help you out quite a bit. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco or just go to their website, pettycliniclowt.com, and tell them Smokey sent you. You'll get a free consultation on semaglutide or whatever it might be. pettycliniclowt.com.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
In the market for a quality metal building? Since 1943, Pioneer Steel and Pipe has helped Central Texas residential and commercial customers with metal building design, panel options, building components, and trim options. Pioneer Steel and Pipe's residential line is energy efficient, offers low maintenance, reduces insurance payments, is impact resistant, and carries up to a 45-year limited warranty. In addition, they can also help you find a metal building contractor for your project. Pioneer Steel and Pipe with locations in Waco and Bryan and at pioneersboys.com.
Aaron Duvall, owner, Texas Beef House. Why did you get into this business?
We kind of were born into it, and it's been for several generations. Our family's been in the beef business, the ranching business, and we've specifically got into the beef business back in about 2015 when me and my son decided to form Texas Beef House and sell directly to the public.
Aaron, everyone knows about Wagyu and how elite that is when it comes to beef. What separates you from anyone else that may do this in this type profession?
We selected out Wagyu mainly because it's such a quality beef and it's consistent. Some beef, some breeds, you may have a good animal every now and then, but Wagyu produces really consistently good beef every time.
Where is the best beef in Texas? Your house. When you order from Texas Beef House, unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive and North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year, whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street behind the bank.
Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive is premier, elite, life-changing experience where you can change your mind, body, and soul. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness offers over 40 group exercise classes each week, including boot camp, indoor cycling, and more. If you haven't been there in quite some time, you're missing out on the improvements for our members. New flooring in the weight room and locker rooms, new paint and mirrors added in the weight room and group exercise room, with more new machines arriving over the next few months. New free weights, weight machines, TRX, rowing machines, stationary bikes, new treadmills, new elliptical machines on spacious weight room floor. Personal training with Christy London, Randall Corley, and Alex Botch, where you will be encouraged and motivated to grow. There's sauna, whirlpool, tanning bed, and kids club. The amenities are great. 16 tennis courts plus an 1,100-seat stadium court, 8 pickleball courts, youth and adult tennis and pickleball lessons. Visit our website, wacotennis.com, or visit Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Mike Scarborough has been our go-to when it comes to LSU, TigerBait.com. Men, what a year it's been. Brian Kelly and the football team finished incredibly strong after a little bit of what looked like a rough start. Kim Mulkey won the national title. Men's basketball was, well, they're trying to overcome, and we'll get to that, the violations and Will Wade being fired. And now the baseball team playing Florida for the national championship. Mike joins Craig Smoak. I'm David Smoak on 365 Sports. What a game. I want to get back. What were your thoughts? You jump out of your chair when Trey Morgan made the play on the squeeze bunt?
That was an unbelievable play. And at times this postseason got a little after Morgan at some of his whiffs at the plate. But that was, that kept LSU in. Of course, Wake Forest had a play at the plate that won them the game earlier in the week. And then, of course, we know what Tommy White did at the end. And I was sitting there watching it, and I said, this is the guy who can end this thing. And here it is. I said, here it is. And then it went out the yard. So a lot of people say it's one of the better games in CWS history. And, of course, Warren Morris had the play of all plays in history with this game against hit against Miami in the 90s. But now it's a daunting task with the Gators coming up. And, I was on a show in St. Augustine, Florida about 3 weeks ago, and they were pretty much predicting over there that they thought it was going to be an LSU-Florida all-SEC final, and that's what we got.
So, Mike, this program's no stranger to winning big games, being in Omaha, doing all of that. But how would you describe, for those who are just catching on to the Tigers or those who were watching last night, haven't followed the whole journey, what's been kind of the story for this team? And I guess not too much of a surprise that they're here at the end.
Well, coming out of fall ball and knowing what they got in the portal last year and what they had coming, the thought was anything less than Omaha would be a letdown, and that odds-on favorite to win it all. And then lost they legitimately lost 3 starting weekend pitchers to injuries between the end of fall baseball and the first 2 weeks of the season. LSU's Saturday and Sunday starters might be midweek starters had they stayed healthy in the pitching position. And then some of the guys that we're seeing just have amazing performances on the mound for LSU as they claw through the losing bracket are guys who got roughed up mightily throughout the season. Had some, Riley Cooper for one. And for the way those guys have stepped up and had their best performances as pitchers for LSU this entire week has been astonishing. That, to me, that is the story. I mean, we all know about Skeens and Cruz and Tommy Tanks and on and on. But to me, it's all the other pitchers that have come in and gotten some major some very solid innings to keep LSU alive. And of course, you had to pitch Skeens last night in order to get to any opportunity to face Florida. And then we'll see Tide Floyd tomorrow night, and they'll go from there. But I guess the only thing that would make you really think that this would be a team of destiny is if somehow you had a couple of days of really severe weather and the series got pushed a little bit further out, and then maybe Skeens could come back around at the end.
Now, LSU and Florida, did they not play once before, or is it more than that for the College World Series championship?
No, they did not play. They were not on the schedule for. They did not play during the regular season.
Okay,
and they didn't play each other in the SEC tournament either.
So they did play for the World Series in 2017, right? Florida winning that series in 2 games. So they've been here, and they're both very proud programs. Obviously, mega athletic departments. Your thoughts about Florida and LSU, and maybe the matchup between two, because we know both of them are very, very good.
Well, and also don't forget Kevin O'Sullivan was the highly thought to be next baseball coach replacing Paul Maneri. And that fell through, and there was a lot of, malicious stuff out on the internet as to why he might not be the guy. And everybody knows some of that stuff that's been out floating on the internet for years. But I think O'Sullivan really wanted the LSU job if it would have been offered to him. So to me, that's a little bit of a side story. But, the way this thing is played out, it's kind of like because of the pitching, a lot of, including myself, thought maybe they might win a game or two and that'd be the end of it. And you just start to think, like I said earlier, is this a team of destiny? And these kids just are bought in, and we'll see if the clock runs out on them. If somehow they could win the first game, then it's really going to be something.
We're talking to Mike Scarborough, TigerBait.com. LSU with a dramatic win, beating Wake Forest back-to-back nights after losing, and they had to kind of come through, not the loser's bracket, but they had to kind of come through the elimination bracket, and here they are now on the verge of a best-of-3 with Florida starting tomorrow.
Hey, Mike, I don't know the whole history of LSU year by year, but we've been talking a lot about just the run that TCU's been on. I mean, being I think the first team ever to win a college football playoff game, a college World Series game, NCAA tournament game, all in a calendar year, amongst various other things. It's been a pretty good year for LSU too. Just where does this is there talk about how great the year's been overall? Where does this kind of sit? I know there's been so much success there over the years, but is this have a magical type of year just all around for the athletic department, or is this business as usual?
Well, it is a magical year, but because the debate we were having all last year, because Jay Johnson and Mulkey came in together, the debate was, who would win a national championship first, and most people said Jay, and of course now what happens if he ends up doing it as well? They both came in together. They're both in year two. That would really be something, because most people thought women's basketball, we thought if anything would be next year with what was coming in recruiting, and then what happened with Iowa beating South Carolina, and it just seemed like the sea parted for LSU to make that run throughout the tournament, and it's happening here. But I think the only thing that's really failing miserably in the LSU athletic department from a major standpoint is men's basketball, and that's going to take a good while for Matt McMahon to dig out of the hole that was left there. And there's a lot of people hedging their bets if he's the guy that can get it done. He's going to need a little bit more marquee of a recruiting approach, I think, to get to the next level. He's got some good guys coming in, but I don't know if there's anything there to get you, above average in the SEC.
Mike, the baseball team with this win now into this series with Florida. You mentioned men's basketball, obviously Kim and women's basketball, and Brian Kelly with football. But did yesterday's news about LSU retracting, and I hate retracting wins, but I get it, the news of retracting 37 wins under Les Miles and the 10-game ban and show cause with Will Wade, which I think is 5 more games than what McNeese was going to give him, or maybe it's 10 on top of 5. Did that validate LSU getting rid of both of them?
It did, and I can tell you, it was last football season, not this past season, 2 years ago, and of course it was what's really staggering is how long it took for them to release this. Because I can tell you, the athletic department official that I talked to 18 months ago knew that they weren't going to get anything. As far as men's basketball, they knew it then. But you see what the delay did? I mean, how many years did that go? 3 or 4?
Mm-hmm. Mike, when it popped up,
you're really on probation during that multi-year period. You know how hard it is to recruit. Every recruiting visit that Matt McMahon's gone on, and the opposing coaches are able to negatively recruit against you with that hanging over your head. And so, on one hand, that toothless committee, which we've always known they were toothless, they've really never hammered anybody too much. That's the most they could do. And as far as vacating the wins, that was a 12 to 15 period. I'm like, we were all laughing over here. I mean, Patrick Peterson's foot was still on the line against Alabama in 2012 on that bad call, thanks to Tom Ritter and his crew. There was no notable bowl wins. A lot of people remember the Capital One Bowl loss to Joe Paterno in I think, wasn't that his last game or one of his very last games on that field that, they should have ruled that field was not playable. Following year, that stadium ended up getting field turf. But yeah, there was nothing notable. There were some wins there, but it was typical Les Miles, and in 15 he should have been fired. Got fired 3 games into 16, and that's when Ed Orgeron got elevated.
Yeah, Mike, when that first came down, I was in the middle of putting together a segment, and I saw that, and I actually had to do like a triple take to look at the dates. So I was like, wait a second, what are we talking, like all these years later, it's just like, wait, am I reading an old story here? I had to kind of process it at first. I was like, no, this is actually from today. That's amazing how long that took.
What's really funny is I don't think you can go a day on a Texas A&M Aggie message board where they don't bring up the hospital. And when I first saw the news, I'm like, oh boy, they're gonna melt down in College Station because they've been hinging all their hopes on that Our Lady of the Lake stuff. And sorry, folks.
Mike, Brian Kelly, there were some trepidation. I remember we had you on immediately. They had a hell of a year. It seems like he might be just like, I don't know about cruise control, but what is the negative at all as he enters year 2? Is there anything?
I think when you look at this LSU team and what's returning and what's going to be healthy that wasn't healthy during spring football, a lot of football players had all season, got some things cleaned up in shoulders and so forth, didn't participate in spring. With what's coming through the portal, and so forth, and the way the schedule sets up, they get past Florida State. Again, they open with Florida State that Sunday on ABC. It's the only college football game on the Sunday of Labor Day weekend in Orlando. They get past that game, and you look at the schedule. And I'm usually a guy that if I'm, hedging between, like last year, I was thinking 8-4 or 9-3. I was thinking 7-5 or 8-4. I went 8-4, just to not get the grief from the locals. And I'm looking at this team now, and I'm serious. I really think this team can go 11-1. I think they're built that way. You got 2 very good quarterbacks, arguably the best returning quarterback in the SEC. Receivers that burst at the seam at that position. If John Emery is ruled eligible, they have 8 running backs, offensive line depth with 2 returning freshman All-Americans, and the defensive line is going to be as good as it's ever been. The only position that is, I think, the worry is corner, and they've got a lot of bodies there that I think they can come up with a really good solution there. So they're going to score a lot of points. So I think 11-1, and usually when you put in a loss like that, you immediately say that's Alabama, and they play in Tuscaloosa, and I really think LSU beats Alabama 2 years in a row.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I totally understand for why. Garrett, you over here shaking your – Garrett, we got a Garrett, big LSU
pumped.
fan.
I'm pumped, man.
You got anything for Mike you want to throw out there?
Mike, you mentioned the running backs. That's one thing I've been kind of concerned. When you look last year at that room, nobody really got over 100 touches. Do you see somebody finally stepping up out of that group of eight and getting LSU back to the trajectory that you're used to seeing and expecting from the backs out of from the Tigers?
I do, but I do think it's still going to be by committee. But if you look at LSU's history, you can go all the way back to the DiNardo years when you had Kevin Falk and Mealy and Cecil Collins. You can go all Saban's years. LSU has always rotated 2 or 3 running backs every football game. Leonard Fournette had some big games. I think Geis did, maybe Jeremy Hill. But they've always rotated 2 or 3 running backs, and that's why a lot of LSU running backs, when they go pro, still have a lot of tread left on the tire. And I don't think that's going to be anything different, particularly with all the numbers they've got there. I think Josh Williams is still going to be probably your number one. Noah Cain had a great spring. You got 2 highly touted freshmen, and Caleb Jackson, who's 100. It runs 100 meter in about 10.6. At 5'11", 215, 220 pounds, and Trey Holly, who's holds the all-time rushing yardage record for the state of Louisiana high school football. He broke Nick Brissett's record last year. So, and they got other bodies. I mean, we'll see. There's a couple of guys there. Obviously, Emery shows it. Burst had a great game against Alabama. But he's prone to put the ball on the ground, and we'll see if he gets what he needs academically. But that position is absolutely loaded.
Man, I'm looking at that schedule, and you're right, man. There's outside of that Florida State game. I mean, who knows, like Hugh Freeze and Auburn, or random Ole Miss game or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I totally see where you're coming from as far as the schedule goes, and Alabama there in November the 4th. So, man, they are set up to be pretty good. What kind of pageantry you're expecting for that FSU game, given how their expectations have risen from just last year as well?
Well, having been to multiple Citrus Bowls and Capital One Bowls, I don't know if the venue makes it that big of a deal, but it is a big deal because it is the first game of the season. How last year's game ended in New Orleans. Both teams are going to be highly ranked. Sunday night, I think it's 6 o'clock Central. You got the primetime audience. There's going to be a lot of fanfare with it. But I think the bigger game is the following opener in 24 against USC in Las Vegas. Every LSU fan every LSU fan I know says they're booking a trip for that one. But even though if you get past Florida State in that opener and you look at the schedule, there's still a lot of landmines, and there's still November's still going to be tough. A&M will come back to Tiger Stadium, and LSU wants to avenge that awful performance in College Station.
Yeah. What has been something maybe, Mike, that has impressed? What has impressed you most about Brian Kelly, or maybe what was a surprise, something that you've grown to appreciate, or what have you, in terms of just how he operates and how it compares to people you've seen in the past with that program?
I like how he immediately diagnoses a problem, and he doesn't suffer fools. I think he can see who his guys are. If he made a hire that maybe didn't work out, it doesn't take him long to see that someone's not what he thought they were, or whatever it is, whatever he might have inherited. Just the attention to detail, but at the same time allowing everybody in his staff to do their job. And I'll tell you something else that I think he's got a real positive morale thing going with his staff, because having seen go from Saban to Miles actually worked his staff worse than Saban did. He'd make them stay at 10 o'clock at night just to go over things 3 or 4 times. Eventually his staff would say, look, man, we know you don't want to go home, but we do, And so, yeah, I think that's in the recruiting, I think has gotten up to a whole other level. But of course LSU is one of those programs where they've got, 35 analysts in the building, and it's some of that stuff's gotten out of hand across the whole country. But and I think just from a media standpoint, the access that we've never had the type of access that under any coach since the 90s at LSU, and that's saying something, particularly in the age of social media. It seems like every year things get that we've normally gotten get taken away. That's not the case under Kelly. I mean, we've had access to full scrimmages. Now, we didn't get that in the spring because they were so thin at so many positions, they weren't doing scrimmages. But had they, had a full complement, we would have had access to full practices and been able to see like 35 and 55 play scrimmages at the end of some of the 2 or 3 practices. Access to coordinators, we never got that under the previous 2 coaches. So that's some of the differences there, and I think he's absolutely loving here, and I like it when it's funny to me when I talk to some of the guys that cover Notre Dame and that I talk to regularly, and they'll see something about Kelly and they're like, who is that guy? Because he's a totally different guy down here, because he doesn't have to have his collar button here. I think he's really taken to South Louisiana and the culture and the food, and he's a lot looser than my interpretation of the man before he got here.
It's interesting you say that, Mike, and I know we got to run, but when Mack Rhodes' name came up as being hired as the athletic director at Baylor, we had a newspaper writer in Missouri who covered Missouri on the show like that day and said that there was no access, there was nothing, and we've had everything opposite of that. And so, and he was going through a time at Missouri. Remember, they had the racial divide and they had some other issues going on within that program. But hell, he shows up at Baylor to handle the football aftermath, and he's been completely the opposite. So perhaps you're enjoying that with Brian Kelly like we were able to do and have been able to do with Mack Rhodes. LSU has won 6 has been to 6 national titles, 91, 93, 96, 97, 2000, and 2009. And Florida beat them in 2017. They've been to what? No, they've won 8, right? They've won 6, been to 8, including what we see with Wake Forest starting tomorrow.
Yes.
That's a bunch.
Florida, yep.
Yep, that's a bunch. Thanks for your time. We appreciate it. Mike Scarborough, TigerBait.com with us on 365 Sports. LSU, Florida, open up the College World Series. Best of 3 tomorrow. When we come back, we'll have some notes to get to start the 5 o'clock hour. A couple of more of those summaries from Athlons on certain teams in the Big 12.
I want to hear from Oklahoma State on there.
Okay, well.
Yeah, I want to hear from Oklahoma State because I guess somebody in here posted the video of us running down the future rankings of the Big 12.
Okay.
And I don't think people realize we just dove into that. It wasn't like we studied and we just went into that and just had one person say, well, where's Oklahoma State and where would OU? Well, OU's not a part of the conversation for one, but where would Oklahoma State be? I'll say I weigh basketball and football far heavier than I do equestrian or wrestling or baseball or whatever.
Or acrobatics and tumbling. Yeah.
A&T. So I focus mostly on football and basketball when talking about the overall strength of an athletic department, and that's where my head was. So when you're looking at K-State, you're looking at TCU, you're looking at Baylor, you're looking at Texas Tech over the last couple of years. I think those are all brands that are built pretty well. Now, may I feel differently about Baylor football after this year? I might.
Well,
may I feel differently about Tech basketball after this year? I could. So on and so forth. But based on the last couple of years and who's done what over time, I feel confident about those 4, and where they're going. And Oklahoma State, I think
you're talking about those who are continuing to be a part of the Big 12 with the exception of Texas.
Playing for championships at the top, as far as the big money sports and kind of being the big brands, I guess, at the top. But like we've all said, we don't think, or at least I think most of us, we don't think there's going to be an OU Texas element to this where it's just like it's K-State and TCU's conference.
No.
I think it's going to be, depending on what year you look at, OSU's or it's Baylor's or it's Tech's. It's all going to depend. And this year it's definitely TCU's.
And even with Texas and OU in the mix, you've seen Oklahoma State in football, TCU in football, Kansas State and Baylor in football.
I think Oklahoma State gets weighed down by men's basketball. And then, beyond that, though, they've been doing it well for a long time. But I am curious to hear what they have to say about them because it is a bit of a mystery, I think, for most folks what to expect from Oak State.
An opposing Big 12 assistant coach on Oklahoma State, and we'll also pick a couple of other programs to look at. This is 365 Sports. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive. There's an hour and 5 minutes before they close. They are open tomorrow, and they have right now bone-in pork chops available for $1.99 a pound. A pound of frozen ground chicken for $1.75 a pound. Andouille sausage, great for any type. I know fish fries are pretty much, they're not over, but the crawfish, we're getting into that time of the year where that's basically on the end of it. But andouille sausage for jambalaya or gumbo or just on the grill, $2.99 a pound. I made some pasta the other day, got some andouille sausage from Waco Custom Marketplace. It was a cream crawfish sausage and shrimp pasta, and the andouille sausage was fantastic. And then the king crab, $40 a pound. Snow crab, $13.99 a pound. Full-service butcher shop, full-service bakery. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Cam Heathcott, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why we take the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Cam Heathcott in Conroe at 936-756-7717. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Cars priced right, day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
Boozers is the wedding ring store and more. If you're ready to get engaged or already married and want to upgrade your wife's ring for a special anniversary, Boozers is the place to go. With the largest selection of premier quality diamond engagement rings and wedding rings in Central Texas. They have 7 cases with over 300 styles of rings from top designers like Natalie Kay. Choose from yellow, white, or rose gold, plus beautiful top quality loose diamonds. With an in-house jewelry, they can also custom make anything you want. Bring in a picture or drawing and let Boozers create your one-of-a-kind pendant or ring. They can even use some of your old gold and diamond jewelry to create something new. At Boozers, you'll find a great selection of quality timepieces, and Boozers is the place for expert watch maintenance and repairs too. They specialize in expert Rolex watch repair for fine jewelry, watches, custom work, and more. Go to Boozers on Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Boozers, the wedding ring store and more.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
This is 365 Sports. Want more updates during the day? Follow 365 Sports YT on Twitter.
All right, going to check in with the chat room for a second. We'll get to that Oklahoma State anonymous. It just says an opposing Big 12 assistant coach. We've read Tech, we've read Baylor, Kansas State, and TCU. So we'll read a couple of them here. Brandon Marcello from 247 Sports has, in fact, Garrett, let's preview that. This is just a sneak peek, and then we're going to have him on to explain all this. Now, some of you are not going to get this, and it's only because, let me explain first. So what they came up with, we've had Dave Bartu on before, who's part of the College Football Matrix. And remember, they have clients, and they've been compiling information forever about coaches and programs and more. So this is the coach rating index, and we'll get into how they rank it. It's not just the head coaches, but here are the top 10. Brian Hartline, who's an absolute beast of a recruiter, offensive coordinator now at Ohio State at 10. Phil Parker's the defensive coordinator at Iowa. You could say a lot of things about Iowa, but their defense is really, really good, and their special team's pretty good. Mike Norvell, young, and what he's already done to turn around Florida State at 8. Del McGee, running backs coach at Georgia. And then you have LeVar Woods, special teams coach at Iowa. Now you go to the next 5. At number 5, Bobby April III, outside linebackers coach at Stanford. Lemansky Hall, defensive ends coach at Clemson. Now, there is an asterisk here next to Lincoln Riley, and I'll let Brandon Marcello explain. Lincoln Riley, not as a head coach, but as a quarterbacks and offensive coordinator at USC. And his explanation is very unique of why Riley is there at 3, because he would not be according to Brandon, in the top 10 if it was just as a head coach. Mike Tressel, linebackers coach, Wisconsin, and then Nick Saban, the head coach at Alabama, at number 1. And we'll let Brandon explain a little bit further about those ratings. That's a tease, and we'll get into that here in just a moment. But, Craig, and we have been looking at Athlon's magazine, and each school, each program, has an opposing Big 12 coach commenting on them. Oklahoma State, probably the most confusing team in the entire league. They can beat the crap out of you or beat themselves the same way. It really just depends on the week. For having a veteran coach, they struggle to stay consistent. They have an offensive system that works for them, and it's very good. After Texas and OU leave, they could have been the top roster, and they could have been the top roster in the league, but right now, they're a good bit behind TCU and Kansas State. Alan Bowman, their quarterback, could work out in Mike Gundy's system. He obviously knows the league. The defensive coordinator hire in Brian Nardo is intriguing. It's like what he did a few years back, bringing Mike Yurcich in from a small school. I'd worry less about the small school hire and more about rebuilding from scratch using the portal. Former defensive coordinator Jim Knowles leaving really hurt them. But so did the turnover. They've had a lot of developmental guys peak at the right time in 2021 and didn't really have the depth underneath. That's from an opposing Big 12 coach on Oklahoma State.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much, I think, what most people feel like. They don't really know what to think about Oklahoma State, is what I'm gathering. Same thing with Baylor. Very similar in that way. I think outside of the fact that Gundy obviously has a massive head start on Aranda and Big 12 experience, but yeah, beyond that, I mean, Alan Bowman, we've seen him in this league before. We saw him in Texas, in Lubbock for Texas Tech, and he was depends on the game, right? Like, I mean, sometimes he's pretty good, and I certainly think in that offense he's got a chance with Gundy and crew to be pretty good. But yeah, there are a lot of questions and just a lot of unknown about what to expect from them. And I do think that if you're looking at the future of the Big 12, then you know what? They're right there in the group of everybody else in the league as far as who can be on top. Yep. Like, as far as that question goes, you know, there is no 1, 2, 3. There's like, name a team. They could be the team that's on top, and Oklahoma State has the potential to do that. Now, obviously, they're having to overcome some things in men's basketball. But on the football side, yeah, 2 years ago they were in the Big 12 championship. 2 years ago they were on the verge of the college football playoff. And then I don't know what the hell happened last year. Like, you know, Spencer Sanders got dinged up, obviously, but, you know, for the exodus of transfers that they had, including Spencer Sanders, it was all just very odd. But, yeah, Gundy's a great coach, and if they were to jump up and win, you know, 9 games this year, I don't think anybody could say maybe you wouldn't say you saw it coming, but you wouldn't say that you were surprised, right? I mean, like, that's kind of how I feel about them. Of like, yeah, anything's possible.
You say that again about last year? You weren't surprised?
No, I'm saying this year.
Oh, this year.
If they won 9 games, I say I wasn't expecting it, but I wouldn't be surprised either because he's good at what he does, and you know they've been a solid program. But yeah, it's been a little bit of a seesaw, you know, these last couple of years, and that, you know, with all these new faces and changes, it's just like, okay, outside of Gundy, what do you expect? And right now, I don't know, and I don't think a lot of people know what to expect.
Wet Blanket, thanks for this note. I did not think this way, but there have been, you know, with Oklahoma dipping last year, and Texas has been kind of right above treading water. No Big 12 school has won more football games than Oklahoma State the last 3 years. Now, that's not 8, 10, 12 years, but they would be in that conversation around with Oklahoma, too, because of their consistency. And that's what made last year so surprising. When they won that game in Waco, when they came into Waco in the rematch, or the third time to meet Baylor in 2 years, they came in and they looked like, okay, they're fine. They beat Baylor up a little bit. It was a close game, but they were the better team pretty much the entire game. And then the wheels fell off. And yes, there were injuries. There was attrition. Everybody deals with that. But Barry Crawford, Oklahoma State has been to 17 bowl games in a row. That's why, if they are good, it would not surprise, I think, Craig, I'm speaking for you, but for me, because of that statistic. They always find a way. There have been years where they've been better than you thought, and there's been years when you're like last year, what the hell happened? But that is an amazing stat that probably not most people around the country would realize.
Yeah, that's an incredible run. You know, when he was a young pup. I don't know. People would have predicted that 20 years later, Gundy would still be doing his thing in Stillwater, and getting them to the various points of where they are, where they've knocked on the big door a couple of times now, including a couple of years ago. But, yeah, they've been remarkably consistent. They'll make a bowl game this year. Just as far as where in the pecking order they sit, I don't know. But, who knows about the Big 12 this year? Not a soul.
I don't.
Not a soul knows about the Big 12 this year. I mean, everybody's got their rankings. Everybody's got their opinions and all that, and that's great, and that's what we do. But, I mean, I don't think anybody could say with 100% certainty of this is exactly how it's going to go. And, I mean, for one, it's sports. It's college football, too, so it's even crazier than probably other sports from time to time. But I just think this league across the board is so even or just riddled with question marks that you could name 6 teams to win the Big 12 and make an argument. You can make an argument. TCU could run it back. You can, as far as getting to the Big 12 championship game and maybe even winning it. K-State, they don't feel like they're not going to be right there in the mix. Texas doesn't feel like they're not going to be in the mix. Oklahoma doesn't think they're not going to be in the mix. Oklahoma State fans still feel like they clearly should be in the mix. I know Baylor fans are a little bit on the ledge. For one, they're a little bit more of a nervous Nelly sometimes than others. But also, I think, there's obviously a lot of questions going from 12 wins in the greatest year in school history to losing to Air Force at TCU Stadium in a blizzard. So, the way that ended put such a sour taste in people's mouths. That I think that really weighs them down a bit more than maybe the others as far as the confidence level of being able to leap back up. But, yeah, I think there's a handful of Texas Tech obviously feels like they could go probably win the conference this year, right? So, yeah, well, I think half the league feels like they're capable of doing it.
And that's why in my hand, and I'm not showing you because I picked the 1 through 14, and I'm telling you right now it was like throwing darts. I was.
Hell, KU feels like they could go on a run. They feel like they might have the best player in the league or the offensive player of the year at least. So, I mean, even they are right there. I think the only teams you go they're probably not going to win it are the new teams. And, West Virginia, right? And maybe one or two others. Maybe you say Baylor in that. I don't know. But, the last time they jumped up and won one, it wasn't expected.
They weren't expected to win it in 19 or 21.
No. So, I mean, they've shown that they can not have very high expectations and then just go on a run.
I think the only time Baylor won a Big 12 title, they've won 3 in the last, since 2013. 13 was somewhat surprising. You could see the build. 14, and of course, they had the great game with TCU. They were, I don't even know if they were favored that year, but that was not a surprise because you could see those two getting ready to just kill each other on the football field.
You talk about what ifs in college football, and I know 95% of the country probably wouldn't have given a damn, but I don't know. I think you could have swayed some of those people. You put TCU and Baylor that year in a Big 12 title game after the 61-58, and you put a playoff spot on the line because that would have been the Ohio State spot. Granted, Ohio State, with what they did afterwards, they made that argument just kind of irrelevant to everybody but TCU and Baylor folks, quite frankly. But, I mean, can you imagine what that game would have been like back then? Patterson and Briles, a rematch after the way 61-58 went. That would have been insane. Oh, man, that would have been awesome to watch. That's one I definitely feel like we missed out on. It wouldn't have been possible because they didn't have a championship game, but if you could just go back and, tweak some – let's just – make a championship game in 2014, or was that 14?
It was 14. It would have been a lot healthier for Bob Bowlesby. It would have been a lot healthier for TCU and Baylor fans because if Baylor wins, that means they won twice. If TCU wins, and of course they had the huge lead and just blew it, you would have an answer. That's what the conference championship would be all about. All right, give me one more team that you want to hear from. I've given Baylor, TCU, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, and Kansas State. These are among the 8 returning teams. Let's see here. Let's do Kansas.
Yeah, I was thinking of Kansas.
It'd be interesting to hear Kansas with Jalen Daniels back and the run that they made with Lance Leipold. Lance Leipold showed last year, what he showed last year is that they raised the floor to being a really hard team to shut down and to scheme for. And then if they can keep recruiting and developing, the ceiling, it's a lot higher than we thought for Kansas. They're a wild card team. They're still not particularly talented, but they're so creative on offense, and it compensates in a lot of places. It's a lot of work pre-snap and with formations, and they're very disciplined in how they do it. Quarterback is damn good. If he didn't get hurt, you had the feeling they were going to make a run even to win the conference, or at least at the end of the conference seriously. The defense is pretty far behind. They're working the portal to get up to par, but it's still a ways off in terms of depth. It will be interesting to see how they translate last year into high school recruiting. Moving forward, they could overhaul that brand if they continue to win.
I think I agree with, I think a lot of it just depends on Jalen Daniels and his health, right? I mean, if he's fully healthy all year long, then, they're capable of doing some pretty magical things. If not, then, we saw it can get a little sideways there because he's just that good. I mean, it's not a knock on the rest of the team. It's just that he's good. And I think that they're better as a team than they were a year ago. There's a lot of optimism surrounding them, and for good reason. I don't know if I'm ready to go like Big 12 title contender, but as far as contenders go, like I was just saying a few minutes, they're right there like everybody else. I mean, I think the only team, again, that you just say from the old Big 12, you're like, they have absolutely no chance of winning the Big 12 this year is West Virginia. Is that fair?
Well, I have them at the very bottom.
Slightly above zero.
Yeah, no, it would be the Big 12 has surprised us before because of what last year was like and the year before. But, yeah, I think that would be really, that would be like, good God, are they on a run? And that means that some guy, some player, quarterback or running back, is just having a year out of his mind.
Yeah, I mean, like it would take like a Heisman run from somebody because I just don't think that you probably consider – I mean, that would just be such a shocking, massive turnaround from – kind of just all the feels over the last year. I mean, I don't know where Iowa State is as far as they're a team that could definitely be way better than is expected to be. I don't know about Big 12 title contender, but again, I just keep repeating it, but I just think everybody in this league outside of probably the Mountaineers this go round and the new schools, they all have that opportunity if things fall the right way, and that's great. That makes for a really fun group of teams and should make for, like we've become accustomed to at the Big 12, every weekend is going to be like coin flip, and that's going to make for some exciting races. And it also could mean that you beat up on each other so much that you don't have somebody standing at the end of the year like TCU was last season. But I don't know. It'll make for good football, that's for sure.
All right, Paxton, by the way, has been watching us on a flat screen. I think he's in a hotel, and he mentioned that earlier in the chat. And I don't know, Paxton, because of the weather, maybe electricity, and I know that weather's been back and forth ever since last week, man. I'm telling you, we've been thinking about you. Perryton among the other cities around the Panhandle. Let's do UT and OU. On Texas, they could get scary good if Quinn Ewers plays the way he's capable. They're really close to connecting it all on offense and playing up to the standard of Sark in what he expects. Losing Bijan is a serious blow, no doubt, but this is the kind of scheme and the kind of roster where you could just adjust the other talent. You don't try to fill a hole. There's as much talent there at tight end and receiver that they're going to burn some teams. The defense is going to take a step up because they've been doing SEC-level work on that line. The staff has really changed the culture. Bo Davis, those guys don't screw around, and they've been weeding out the typical Texas entitlement. We're all used to seeing those boys can hit now. They actually could come back up this season. We will see. Again, I don't think I've read anybody yet of which it did not surprise me. Like it could have been me giving that summary.
I think that's because that's what everybody kind of gathers. They all gather the sort of same things based on the evidence that we have, and maybe there's slight variances based on favoritism or without even knowing it or something. But no, I mean I expect them to be in the Big 12 title game. I've put that on my ballot already, and I don't think that I've decided on whether or not they win that title game, but I have placed them in one of those spots, and I think it would be a massive disappointment that would mean that like Quinn Ewers got hurt or something along those lines if they're not in that game. I think that anything short of like 9 wins would be a massive disappointment, and perhaps Longhorn fans totally disagree with that, but I just feel like on the upward trajectory they feel like you're on, and your last year in the league and a favorable schedule. As far as, there's nothing that's too daunting where you're like, oh my gosh, like they've got this streak where like they could go 0-5. Like there's nothing along those lines. And it just seems like, the culture's in a better place. It just seems like there's a little bit less questions about just everything in general than there have been over the last few years, whether it was, all right, Tom Herman, and is it, where's it? It seems like all their ducks are in a row for the first time in a long time. And they've got that, that alignment with Del Conte on down, with Sark and his assistants and the players that they've acquired. So they're going to be immensely talented. They always are, but I think like truly they're going to be very talented with a lot of NFL guys, and they should be right there.
I remember when Matt Rule in 2017, Baylor was 1-11 that year, and they played Texas, and Texas won the game. But I remember him sharing to me, he said, man, they have a tremendous amount of talent, but man, I don't know about, like the edge to them. And then the next year, of course, I think they beat Baylor again, but in 19, Baylor twisted them around like a pretzel, like they did in the 2021 team. The defense was the difference in those two games. All right, Oklahoma. Oh, by the way, Dundee's on the chat room. Sooners fan here. Love the show, guys. Thank you very much for your tweet or text. Probably the best way to explain last year for Oklahoma is that they've got a head coach who hasn't made all of the hard decisions yet. They're caught between eras. What they were and what they were, and also what was slipping with Lincoln Riley, and what they want to be headed into the SEC next year. I'm not sure Brett understood the landscape of recruiting for Oklahoma coming from Clemson for so long and being able to win guys easier. Norman, you have to work there. It's not easy. With Dylan Gabriel coming back, they're going to be 1 year better on offense because of experience, but they're the least talented on defense that they've been in years. We're curious what Brent changes up with his schemes to account for the deficiencies. You can't run some of that Clemson stuff with what they've got in the front seven. You could tell in warm-ups it wasn't the same Oklahoma defense, and that's crazy because of how Oklahoma always has looked getting off the bus.
Yeah, they are.
Yet another one where you could kind of have said that might have been my summary.
They are inevitably going to be better on defense, right? I mean, it would be hard to not be better than they were a year ago when you looked around at most of the season. So, yeah, I expect the defense will be better. I do think they've overhauled the roster a bit. Like, they brought in a really good class. They've hit the transfer portal and brought in some talented guys. So, imagine if this was the non-transfer portal era, and I know we could do that with like any team, but truly, I mean, that would have been a nightmare. So to be able to go and pluck some guys there, they close strong in recruiting, getting like what Peyton Bowen's there at the very end and making some splashes. They've got some talented guys. They also, like, a lot of it is young though too. So it's like, how quickly can some of those guys contribute? But I mean, they're bound to be better defensively, but to what degree are they better is obviously the question that everybody has for them. Is it like good enough to win a Big 12 championship, or is it, good enough to win 8 games? It's certainly not going to be bad enough with what they've got on the other side of the ball where you're worried about like bowl eligibility or anything crazy like that. And even last year, like, they lost some close games. I mean, they weren't that far off from winning 9 games again. And it just, one way or the other, the Texas Tech game, for example, didn't go their way. Dylan Gabriel gets knocked out the first play of overtime.
By throwing a trick play. Yeah.
Okay. That was a stupid play call. And I know it's hindsight's 2020 and your player got hurt, but you just left the focal point of your entire offense, the one like glaring bright spot on your team. You just left him to just get drilled. I don't know. I still question that a little bit, but hey, hindsight's 2020. I'm sure somebody's explained why it was a brilliant call somewhere else, but it turned out really badly for them. But otherwise, like, they might win that game. They might still lose that game, but they definitely were going to lose that game once Dylan Gabriel got hurt.
Well, when they got torched immediately by TCU and then got boat raced by Texas, I mean, they were in a free fall.
Yeah, TCU beat them up, but Gabriel
TCU took the cloak off of them.
The Texas game does need to have some context when Gabriel doesn't play the entire game, because it was such an ass kicking that, yes, it was historical, but there's it wasn't like he was.
It would have been 35-7.
No, that's what I'm trying to explain. Is they still would have lost, but I don't think they only score 7 points. I don't think they get blanked. I think it's a little bit more competitive, but yeah, they probably still lose that game. I think they've done everything they mostly can as far as, trying to flip the roster the best they can and bring in talent. Offensively, they're going to be dynamic. We know that offense, it's not as special as it once was upon a time because you kind of look around and you see it all over the place. And so it's not as unique maybe as it was a few years ago when that Browse-style offense was just torching everybody and you didn't really know how to counteract it. But that'll be efficient for them. And, the question is defense. I mean, how much better can they get on defense? And if they can get a little bit better, that offense should be good, and they should be good as a result as well.
All right, Paxton's begging, and a couple of others about Iowa State. It's not very long, and it's kind of faded, so I'm going to try to read it, and I'm already struggling doing that anyway. They have discipline, they get after you, and they play a perfect game. They're hard to beat that way. Anyone who plays a perfect game is going to be hard to beat. Obviously, they are not as talented as most teams, and they can't beat you one-on-one. That's not a knock because it's just they're chasing the talent. They wouldn't be successful at a place like this. They obviously weren't good on offense, and they don't have the weapons to plug in. But when you consider how many changes Matt Campbell made to the staff, it's obvious they want to get it right and build it back up. They held on to the quarterback, the 5-star recruit, J.J. Cole. In that recruiting class, that was huge for them. They'll do a really good job identifying their guys early on, and they're smart with their evaluations. No one thinks he's looking to do anything quick and get out of there.
Like doing anything quick and getting out of there?
Like winning and leaving. Like winning and leaving. He had the opportunities maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're past. I think that point now has arrived where he's got to kind of prove it again almost because he's not the hot name. And, all the talk about, well, what about the USC? Well, Lincoln Riley's, jumped to the front of that line, and perhaps others could have as well. But, I mean, no, he's still a dang good coach, but I do think some of that has dissipated, and as a result, that's probably great news for Iowa State. You don't have to worry about it anymore. You don't have to start off 6-0 and then get every question about, where's he going after the year's over with? So, yeah, I think that works in their favor.
I think I'd rather have my coach being the one, where's he going, because that means I'm having success, but you're right about that. That's kind of been dampened a little bit.
Yeah, because you beat somebody, and then the post-game press conference is some random Yahoo from, a national outlet going what, are you going to be here next? It's just inevitably the question that comes up right away when they're having success. So I think to not have that maybe at least initially will be good. They can just kind of go out there and play football and not have much outside noise. Now, granted, if they start to really win big again, then they could find that returning. But it's a problem you'd rather have than not have, right? Is your coach being wanted by somebody. But, yeah, they're a little bit of a mystery too. I do think Deckers is going to be better. They lose some big names, certainly, and that's not something that you just automatically replace at Iowa State to that article's point, but they are one of the toughest outs every time because I think that part about playing a perfect game is spot on, and they can take just about anybody to the limit just by playing a really sound, efficient football game, and it's a matter of the couple of mistakes that occur. Is it on their end or is it on the other team's end? And how is that taken advantage of? But I don't know where to place him anywhere lower or higher than kind of the middle of the pack, and that's because I respect Matt Campbell and what he's built there, but I don't know how good to expect them to be.
I think we've listed you look at all – it's hard with the 4 incoming schools because seeing them in person, although Houston's played Tech and they've played Oklahoma State and they've played Oklahoma, but it looks like to me that you could almost take everybody. Yeah, West Virginia has a challenge, and right now there's a little bit of I'm not so sure about them across the board in the Big 12, even those who are getting most of the limelight like Kansas State, Texas, or even TCU.
Yeah, I think the 4 new schools is just a massive question mark for all of them. And then for West Virginia, it's just expecting it to not be very good, and so they could pleasantly surprise some people. But beyond that, I think everybody's just sort of in no man's land. And if you were to sort them in any kind of order, I mean, outside of having Iowa State 1 and then Texas at 9, I mean, there's not really something that would be super shocking, right? But here's the thing about Iowa State, though. Their schedule is not the best schedule in the world. They do have a pretty tough one. The first game of the year, Northern Iowa, whatever, but they have the side.
Northern Iowa will get after
I know, but let's expect them to win that game. Iowa in week 2, right there, you're just all right, well, they won that game last year, and it turned out to not be that great of a year. It's the first time they'd won it in a while, but that Iowa game will be good as always, but Oklahoma State, followed by OU and Norman, TCU, go to Cincinnati, go to Waco, KU at home, BYU in Provo, Texas at home, K-State in Manhattan. Like, I don't feel like they really get any sort of mulligan in there anywhere of, somebody that's not expected to. I mean, Cincinnati, if that was in Ames, I wouldn't look at that as like being as dangerous, but being in Cincinnati and not really knowing what to expect with them.
Yeah, they're getting Oklahoma, they're getting Texas, they're getting TCU and Kansas State. Yeah. They don't get Texas Tech and they don't get West Virginia, which might be a bad thing because that's probably a team, with all due respect, until we find out, that you'd probably want in your schedule. Of course, Baylor just absolutely blanked the bed in Morgantown last year. All right, when we come back, Brandon Marcello, 247 Sports, and how he came up with this coach rating system, and Dave Bartu from College Football Matrix had a lot to do with it. That's next. This is 365 Sports. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness. Pickleball is taken, not over. It's a place where you can get fit, you can get in shape. You've got classes, dozens of them to be a part of, and personal trainers, all of the equipment you'd ever want, free weights to Cybex to treadmills to Stairmaster. Tennis Academy, basically with Britt Coleman, who is running the youth tennis clinic, which is great all the time, not just during the summer. But pickleball, they built pickleball, took a couple of the tennis courts and made them into pickleball courts, and it's like a bunch of fire ants out there. They're always playing. I've seen some of the guys, I think they're like from Baylor professors that come out and play when I'm there that early, like it's 6:30 in the morning. It is rampantly like fun, exciting, energetic, and more. Jody Thurman is the pickleball pro. Tournaments and much more. Social events to have fun with so everybody gets to know each other. It is a sport that is one of the fastest rising fun hobbies to do or sports to be a part of at Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness, Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
After my first car accident, I feared the biggest damage would be to my wallet. I expected a mountain of bills and a long, drawn-out process. But my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent was there when I needed her and helped me get back on my feet and in my car in no time. Instead of a hassle, I got reassurance and a quick recovery.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
It's pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby is a homegrown, locally owned pizza place that's out of this world. Everything from the dough, the sauce, the sausage topping is made fresh in-house. Not to mention the amazing pizza pillows, the chicken wings are to die for. Try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries or tots, plus great specials on food and drink every single day. Shorty's is also the perfect spot to watch the game with your friends. Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby. Tell them Paul sent you by.
Did you know that 1 out of every 4 men have symptomatic low levels of testosterone and don't even know it? And if you think you're too young to worry about it, guess again. Low T levels can make you feel tired and grumpy, raise your cholesterol, and cause weight gain. Petty Clinic Low T can set up same-day blood screening and results. So if you're tired of being tired, call or go online at pettycliniclowt.com. It's a private clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Affordable, only $165 a month, including lab work, office consultation, testosterone injections, and follow-up visits, compared to $300 or more a month in Dallas or Austin, and you don't have to drive 90 miles one way or the other and fight the traffic. Petty Clinic Low T has board-certified physician consultations that will provide the best form of brand-strength testosterone. Contact Petty Clinic Low T for increased energy, improvement in sexual desire and performance, mood, concentration, even a decrease in body and belly fat. Just off Highway 84 and Old Hewitt Drive in Woodway, pettycliniclowt.com.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is brought to you by Edward Jones Investments and financial advisor Chuck Verno, who'll navigate you through today's financial climate. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go on this Friday, leading you up into the weekend. Hope you have a fantastic weekend. And then I saw this story. Dave Bartu, College Football Matrix, we've had him on before, sent me a note about this story. Brandon Marcello, who's become like a regular because of some of the great columns that he's written. But the coach rating index, and we showed you the top 10 at the top of the hour. Here's the 5 again, and these are not just head coaches. In fact, the only head coach technically here, based on ratings and data, is Nick Saban at 1. Lincoln Riley listed as a quarterback and offensive coordinator at USC. Brandon Marcello, 247 Sports, joins us now on 365 Sports. Brandon, how did you dig into this story to kind of find all of this information? It's very unique because you include position coaches and head coaches.
You know, it's always fascinating to me that, you know, whether it's 24/7 Sports or other recruiting websites, you know, we rate, we scout players, high school players, and we assign them a grade, much like the NFL does with some players. And so, but what about the coaches? How do we judge them? We always judge them by wins and losses, but how are they in developing players? How are they year to year, whether it's a talent disparity or not? And the guys at College Football Matrix Analytics, as you mentioned, have been keeping track of this since 2009, and they've developed their own formula, much like 24/7 Sports has a formula, in grading players and assigning them kind of these grades 1 through 100. And I've started talking to those guys in depth here the last few months, and you know, a lot of this information that they have in their own database is private, and they only share it to athletic departments in which hire them as a consultant. And they were willing, thankfully, to share some of their data with me to produce some content. And it was kind of fascinating to me to see some of the names on these type of lists when I go, hey, who are the top 10 running back coaches? Who are the top 10 head coaches? And for that matter, who are the top 10 coaches, no matter whether they're a head coach or not, coaching in college football today? And, you know, some of these names quite honestly surprised me. And some of them I've been sitting here, I'm sure as you look at this list, you're like, it's about dang time this guy's considered a top 10 coach. Yep. And it kind of, you know, buffers your own belief where you go, wow, finally, somewhat recognizing what I thought, but the numbers actually back it up.
So, Brandon, I know you mentioned the Dave Bartu, College Football Matrix, that side of the equation. When it comes to just what you guys looked at and went into beyond just the wins and the losses, right? Because that's where so much of the focus is. What all went into these calculations and coming up with the end result?
Well, the way it's explained to me by the folks at Matrix Analytics is that they've got a massive grading system where they kind of go through individual units. So if you're a quarterbacks coach, obviously they're looking at that. If you're an offensive coordinator, they're looking at per play efficiency. Same with defenses. That's mostly what they're graded on based off the formula that was shared with me. And then, of course, head coaches are graded on their win and loss records, but it's also broken down by the weighted difficulty / importance in 9 distinct categories that they've developed that range from expected close margin games to how they perform in games with equal, what they believe are equal talent profiles. So this goes beyond just, for example, as I said, per play efficiency, but also goes beyond just the wins and losses. They try to quantify, kind of those things that we always consider intangibles. For one, we could take stats and go, well, they got the number one offense, so obviously he's maybe the number one coach. Not necessarily. There's some other factors that they bring into the equation here.
So explain again, and I read it, and I tried to explain it when we showed up the 10 at the top of the hour. Lincoln Riley is here as a quarterback's coach and offensive coordinator at USC, but if you didn't put him in those categories, but as a head coach, he would not be in the top 10?
He would not, from my understanding. He would not. But as an offensive coordinator, he is. And if we were just going solely by as a quarterback's coach, he would be up there as well. But Lincoln Riley, I mean, goodness gracious, it just makes sense he would probably be up there based solely off of what he's done as a quarterback's coach or, for that matter, offensive coordinator. He's had 3 Heisman Trophy winners as a head coach or as a coordinator at Oklahoma, now at USC. Just an absolutely incredible offense he's had. And say what you will about his defenses, and that's kind of what's held them back at OU and, of course, last year at USC. But listen, he might not win 13, 14 games a year, which is astronomical to think anyway. Only 1 or 2 coaches have been able to do that consistently in the last decade. But he's probably the best play caller in college football. And the numbers back that up, that he is the best play caller in college football, whether it's offense or defense. And it's quite incredible what he's been able to do. And listen, since he's been a head coach, some of these numbers are insane. He's got the best grade as a play caller, 97.49, according to the Matrix Analytical equation. But also, he's produced 28 players in the NFL draft in just 5 short years as a head coach. And a lot of those guys, of course, first rounders, and of course, 3 Heisman Trophy winners.
So most people are going to recognize Lincoln Riley. I think everybody will recognize the guy on the very top of this list, some guy out in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, that's won a lot and done a lot of different things. But, Brian Hartline, I feel, is like a guy who's gotten a lot of attention for what he's been able to do at Ohio State, and he comes in at number 10 on this list. But you mentioned seeing some people and going, like, it's about time. Who was maybe 1 or 2 of those guys for you that got some love that it was deserved?
Yeah, the very next guy on that list, Phil Parker, the defensive coordinator at Iowa. I mean, he has absolutely lifted that program on his back in my eyes in more than half of the years of this last decade when they've been able to consistently win 8, 9, 10 games or more and reach the Big Ten championship game. You guys saw the offense last year. It's one of the worst offenses in modern college football history, I should say. I always try to provide a little asterisk there because obviously there's offenses worse before we start throwing the football. But, listen, what they did last season was enough to prove it to people, I would think. I mean, they led all of college football and was the best in the last 10 years in all of college football and allowing only 3.99 yards per play last season. And, oh, by the way, they scored 7 touchdowns on defense. Incredible numbers. And he's been doing this year after year after year. Maybe not to that level, but they've been consistently in the top 25 in most defensive categories. Most teams, even the top 10, top 15 teams with their defenses, they're not in the top 25 in every category. His defense usually is. That sound fundamental defense that's built on the backbone of those linebackers. And last year he had an All-American in Jack Campbell, who also won the Butkus Award. Phil Parker comes in with a grade of 94.91. He's been coordinating that defense for Iowa since 2012. So he's got a long list of years to be graded upon on here, more than a lot of the coaches on here, and yet he's still number 9. Not a lot of drop-off year to year. One of the more underrated coaches in all of college football, and for that matter, one of the best coaches in all of college football, regardless of his position.
Which is even more reason why Iowa fans should be furious with the offense and the play calling because of not only a defensive coordinator, but I'm very soft-hearted when it comes to special teams and the difference. A good team can be really good, a really good team can be great, and an average team can be pretty good, or bowl team, if they have good special teams, block punts, punt returns, etc., and also the difference in punting and kickoff return coverage. I love the name on here with Brian Hartline. We know he's an amazing recruiter. Now he's going to have even more, I guess you could say, input in what Ohio State does on offense. I don't know about the rest of the ones on the list, but is he probably at the top of the list when it comes to recruiting?
Oh, yeah, he's near there. Him and Dale McGee, the Georgia running backs coach, he's been incredible on the recruiting trail. I've known him for the better part of a decade. But Brian Hartline is like the hot name right now, and he's been the hot name really for the last 2.5 years. And I think he's the next guy that's going to come out of the Big Ten as an assistant coach to be a head coach at a Power 5 program, even though he's not, quote-unquote, calling the offense. I think Ryan Day is going to mostly handle that again this year. But as you said, Brian Hartline is going to get more input into it this year with that finally having that title as offensive coordinator. And this is a guy who not only has gotten it done recruiting-wise and bringing out all these amazing receivers, some of the best receivers we've seen over the last decade, but he's developed some guys, too, that have gone on to be NFL draft picks, even without him being there. Jamison Williams, of course, being a guy who went to Alabama after being at Ohio State and having to ride the bench, went to Alabama and ended up being a first-round pick after just one season. I mean, the list of receivers is incredible. He's had 4 different receivers record 1,000-yard seasons in the last 2 years. Insane numbers, and he's got a great room again this year. I wouldn't be surprised if the right job opens up that we hear Brian Hartline as the head coach in the Power 5 this time next year.
Yeah, he's obviously very, very good. Was there somebody on the list that popped out at you that you weren't expecting?
Ooh, that's a good question. When you look at him, you're like, okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
But I would say Mike Tressel,
okay,
the linebackers coach at Wisconsin, does not coordinate the defense. Obviously, he's just handling one unit there. And listen, Wisconsin's been known over the years for playing their defense, but also I think what stands out about Tressel is that he's been doing it at different spots as well. He started up at Michigan State, where he had 20 guys earn Big Ten honors just in the span of 12 years, coaching linebackers, just really coaching maybe 4 guys at most on the field at once. I should say 3 guys that's on the field at most at once. That's a great hit rate there. And he followed Luke Fickell from Cincinnati now to Wisconsin. I can't wait to see what he does now that he's back in the Big Ten, where he really started to get noticed and get going. I think that a lot of us just kind of maybe not necessarily put him on the back burner, but maybe we did because he went to Cincinnati. But that Cincinnati defense, especially those last 2 years there, when they made the college football playoff, top 5 in a lot of categories. He was the AFCA Assistant Coach of the Year in 2022. This guy, he's just been consistent everywhere. And you look at that grade, it's about as good as it can get. In fact, it's the second best score we've got here, 98.18. I should point this out, too. According to the Matrix Analytics, if you want to go 4, 5-star, that type of rating there, 5 stars are considered grades of 90 to 100. So the number 10 guy on this list, Brian Hartline, has a 94.77, which is pretty much a 95. So you're talking about, obviously, the top 10 here. You're talking about the elite of the elite. There are so many other coaches that are 5-star guys out there as well.
How long before a Kirby Smart slides into it because of what he did as a defensive coordinator at Alabama, what he's done now as a head coach at Georgia? Is it just a matter of maybe needing more wins and losses to get him in this conversation, or would he be right there, right outside the top 10?
I think he needs some more wins and losses. I haven't looked at the data really beyond number 10. They've been pretty limited in what they're offering me, and I wish they would open the entire books for me so I could have a field day with this stuff and just be giggling like a little boy. But listen, he's a guy that's right on the outside looking in based off what conversations I had. In fact, they wrote a little caveat for me in explaining that, listen, you win a national championship this year. I would be surprised at this point you wouldn't be top 10 in these grades. But, as it stands right now, if we want to look at recent history, the last 3 years or 2 years or 4 years, even for that matter, I'd say he's the top coach in all of college football, regardless of position. Better than Nick Saban, and the way he's handled that program, blocked out all the outside noise and all the internal strife and things that's been going on there, and they just beat up on everybody.
Hey, man, great stuff, Brandon. Love the uniqueness of the story. When I picked it up, I'm thinking, okay, I kind of thought I'd know who the 10 coaches, and then I realized when I looked at number 10 with Brian Hartline, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, this is a little bit different, and I appreciated that. I know Dave Bartu and what they do at College Football Matrix. Great stuff. turned it into a hell of an article. Thank you for joining the show today, and have a great weekend.
I appreciate it. More on the way. I'm looking forward to digging into more of this data.
Block your number. I'm telling you, block my number. We'll be in touch. Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate your time. Brandon Marcello, 247 Sports. I love the uniqueness of it. Obviously, would like to have my hands even more on some of the data, the analytics and all that, but I just enjoyed it because it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. Even though I would not surprised that Saban was one, I thought Norvell jumping up pretty quickly into the top 10, but seeing names like Bobby April, Lemansky Hall, and then Hartline, the Iowa defensive coordinator, it kind of, to me, spiced up this article that otherwise would have been the same 10 head coaches that we see probably every year.
Yeah, I mean, if it was a list of head coaches, you can kind of, paint by the numbers and you kind of know what the deal is, but this covers the entire, staffs of each team, so we did get more of a diverse selection than we would if it was just the head coaches. That'd be interesting to see. I mean, just based on this same set of data, sort of where everybody lines up. But Saban be number one on both lists. I mean, he's number one overall on this list, so that doesn't change. But beyond that, he's the only head coach. Because Riley, like he said, is not.
Well, Norvell.
Yeah, but he's not counted as a head coach.
Norvell is.
Is he?
Yeah, I think Norvell is, yeah.
Florida State offensive coordinator.
Oh, okay. All right. Then, yeah, because he hadn't had much. He's kind of like.
And why would he be two?
Like, yeah. No, okay.
So, yeah, you'd think Kirby's probably two, right? But beyond that, I think it'd be cool. But I do like that it's not just. They just didn't here's the head coaches and then leave it at that. I do like that there's more of an in-depth look at, a guy who's doing well as a linebackers coach somewhere, or a guy who's doing well as just purely a safeties coach, or whatever your area of expertise might be. And then, if you're really good at, one particular area, then it weights it that way, where Lincoln Riley is honored as an OC, but not as a head coach, or Mike Norvell, same thing. It's a lot of different things you can do and play around with. And as he teased there at the end, I imagine that they will have some more lists along these lines. But good for some guys who maybe don't get a lot of attention too, because they're not head coaches or big, huge coordinators that are really well known.
Here's another
good for them to get some spotlight.
Norvell also has already produced Dan Lanning and Kenny Dillingham from his coaching tree, from where they used to be and assisted on his staff. All right, one thing real quickly about Allen Samuels, and there will be, of course, coming up 4th of July around the corner with some new incentives and new discounts. But right now, you can get the 2023 Dodge Challenger or Dodge Charger SXT, GT, or RT with total values up to $2,000 and $500 for first responders. The Ram trucks, 10% off MSRP on the new 2023 Ram 1500 Lone Star Crew Cab, or 2.9% financing for 72 months. And Jeep, with numerous incentives and discounts, and everybody who goes to Allen Samuels, it's a part of being a first responder, you get $500 in extra bonus cash. Allen Samuels, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Ted Teague, the general manager, on the Loop 340 and east of 84 in Waco. Garrett, great job. Glad to have you back. Jack McKenzie, rolling along, just hammering out stories, graphics, and more. Graham Bronstein, thank you very much for being here. Emery Winter is getting everything together, what we do and have tonight at 10:30 on 365 Sports Tonight in the CW. Craig, I'm glad you're okay. The car's already been fixed. AAA, you're amazing. I'm David Smoak. Thank you very much to our sponsors and to you, the audience. This is 365 Sports. Have a great weekend and good night.
Ideal